challenge now is to decide, in the light of these new abilities, what constraints should govern the conduct of war. You've been listening to The Inquiry on the BBC World Service with me, Gary O'Donoghue. The producer is Jill Collins, technical producer Craig Boardman, and the editor is Tara McDermott.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we're live in downtown Winnipeg at our studios, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. And I'm so sorry to you watching on YouTube because you just got a picture of me come up, and what you had was a gorgeous sunrise as the sun's just starting to come up. Beautiful, beautiful color out there, almost like a corally red. It is going to be cloudy in the city of Winnipeg later today, so enjoy this start to the morning. It's going to be steamy to a high of 29 with humidex 37, so super sticky out there. There's that shot again Brad put up. It's just beautiful out in terms of the sky condition. So that's today in the city of Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us. Our show's on until 8:37 a.m. and heard all over Manitoba, and we are glad to have you with us wherever you're listening this Wednesday morning. Brad is Brad Lillies. He is the producer and director of our YouTube stream, in case you're watching the show there. May McKillop's also in on the team today behind the controls of the program as our tech. And Corey Funk is also going to be with us. Corey will be on the air covering weather and your commute, and he directs Information Radio here on CBC. Here is Matt Humphrey, though, 2 minutes to 6 o'clock to get us started with our day's Manitoba headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Experts say Manitoba needs better forest management practices to mitigate and prevent the devastating effects of wildfires. But there isn't a clear consensus on the best course forward. At the bottom of the hour, we'll hear advice from experts out of British Columbia, a province which has had a lot of experience dealing with wildfires. And Air Canada has reached a tentative agreement with the union representing some 10,000 flight attendants, signaling an end to their contract dispute. And while that will come as a relief to many travelers, for some Canadians, the news came too late to save their trips. We'll hear some of their stories at 6:30.
All right, thanks very much, Matt.
Back soon. So
what is unpaid work? Can anyone answer that? Where's the line between work, unpaid work? What industries is it most prevalent in? We're going to talk about that today because of course, what is happening with the tentative deal for the Air Canada flight attendants. So stay tuned. That's in the first hour of the show. Also, we're going to take you over to Granite Curling Club. They have been in a dispute with the city over some of their land that the city wants to develop. And there was a development in the story yesterday. So we're going to take you there in case you missed that. In addition, today on the show, Matt just mentioned what's happening with management to prevent wildfires. And we will have Rosanna Hempel, the lead reporter on that story, in studio to walk us through the details. Right now, though, it's time for World Report at 6.
Today on Q.
I'm Jill Deacon in for Tom Power. Filmmaker Sean Devlin is here to talk about his new movie Asog about the super typhoon Haiyan, which hit the Philippines in 2013.
I actually had to add a new level warning to the storm systems.
And why he chose to hire real-life survivors of the typhoon to star in the film.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Air Canada flight attendants are in the process of ratifying the contract agreement that ended their strike. Their union reached a deal with the airline. It brought workers off the picket lines, but as Yasmin Khanea reports, the effects of the strike will be felt for days.
Air Canada planes are in the sky once again, but the airline says passengers should still expect cancellations in the coming days while it returns to normal operations.
We had a flight on Monday and it was cancelled. I think it was Sunday.
Spanish tourist Carlos Reyes and his family are stuck in Vancouver, unable to catch a flight until the end of the week, spending hundreds of dollars on hotels in the meantime.
Air Canada doesn't pay anything. They say it's a strike, and so they are not responsible for the costs of the hotel.
But hotels aren't an option for everyone.
So I slept in chairs on the airport last night.
Kate Brown waited for hours at Vancouver International Airport to return to Toronto.
I'm really stressed and I really want to take a shower and just lie in a proper bed.
Air Canada estimates 500,000 passengers have been affected by the strike. Vancouver resident Lucy Bingfield and her partner have lost days off their Portugal trip, but say it's worth it.
At the end of the day, what's more important, us going on vacation or people getting paid for the actual work they do? Yeah.
Air Canada says it could take more than a week for operations to return to normal. Yasmin Ranea, CBC News, Vancouver.
Canada Post and the union representing its workers are back at the bargaining table today. The union is upholding a ban on overtime work. Postal workers rejected the Crown Corporation's latest offer a few weeks ago. The offer would have included wage hikes of around 13% over 4 years and the addition of part-time workers. NATO military leaders will meet virtually today to find solutions to ending the war in Ukraine. Kyiv is looking for security assurances, but Russian President Vladimir Putin says he will not tolerate NATO troops in Ukraine. As Crystal Gomansing reports from London, Russia is not backing down on its attacks.
A fuel and energy facility in the Odessa region in southern Ukraine was hit in the early morning hours. Fire teams struggled to control the inferno. State emergency services describe it as being the result of a massive Russian drone strike. Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, shared images of the attack and another in the Sumy region on his Telegram channel, writing that new sanctions and tariffs are needed on Moscow until diplomacy works fully. In the meantime, NATO military experts are preparing to discuss potential post-conflict plans for Ukraine.
Deterrence rests on the credible ability to fight, or it's not a worthwhile guarantee.
Retired General Richard Barrons was the commander of the UK's Joint Forces Command until 2016. While many nations, including Canada, France, and the UK, have said they will be involved in security guarantees for Ukraine, what that means in real terms is unknown.
The rules of engagement are going to have to be robust enough to deal with a very tense, difficult situation. And you must assume that any agreement will at least fray at the edges at some point.
The front line in Ukraine stretches over 1,000 kilometers, and Russia has not committed to ending the war or even engaging in more talks. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
An Israeli military official says about 60,000 reservists will be called up before the IDF pushes forward with its ground offensive into Gaza City. The call-up notices could be sent in the coming days, and reservists will be ordered to report for duty in September. The official told Reuters news agency the reservists could be in the Air Force, intelligence, or supporting roles, or they may replace active duty soldiers stationed outside Gaza. The statement comes as Israel is still under pressure to respond to a 60-day ceasefire deal. Hamas has already agreed. Israel is expected to respond by Friday. More U.S. troops are moving into Washington, D.C. They've been ordered there to help U.S. President Donald Trump clean up crime. Members of the National Guard from West Virginia are now in the U.S. Capitol, and Republican governors from other states say they're deploying more members, too. The CBC's Lisa Shing is in Washington this morning. And Lisa, exactly how many U.S. troops are in D.C. or headed there?
So there are already 800 National Guard troops in D.C. Now, the Republican governors of 6 states are sending an additional 1,000 troops to the district. Guards from West Virginia are in Washington already and could be operational today. These Republican governors, South Carolina, Ohio, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee, as well as West Virginia, like I said, all announced they'll send guards here. This is a show of force and escalation as U.S. President Donald Trump cracks down on crime. If you remember last week, Trump announced a federal takeover of the D.C. Metropolitan Police Force, citing a public safety emergency. Now, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has routinely said that's overkill, that this isn't about crime in the district.
The numbers on the ground in the district don't support 1,000 people from other states coming to Washington, D.C.
While crime is an issue here, the stats show violent crime is down 27% this year compared with last year.
But Trump is disputing the mayor's crime stats, right?
He is. There are reports the Justice Department is now looking into whether the D.C. Police Department manipulated crime data. Trump seemed to confirm this investigation, saying on social media that D.C. gave fake crime numbers in order to create a false illusion of safety. The D.C. Police Department put one of its commanders on leave back in May and started investigating him for allegedly making changes to crime data. But the mayor has said the police chief has investigated all of the city's policing districts and only had concerns about the one commander.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Lisa Shing in Washington. The proportion of Mounties on long-term off-duty sick leave is at an all-time high, and an outside task force suggests it is now a critical issue for the RCMP. Long-term off-duty sick status is for absences longer than 30 days caused by illness, injury, or disability. As of the end of last year, about 7% of regular members were on this kind of leave. The cost, an estimated $58 million. The task force says it could affect public safety, and it suggests unlimited sick leave at full pay needs to be reconsidered. The RCMP union says it strongly disagrees. Nova Scotia fire officials say they are making progress containing a large wildfire in Annapolis County. They say the Long Lake fire did not grow overnight, but manager of fire protection Scott Tingley says the danger isn't over.
We do anticipate that there could be a couple of challenging days in between now and likely Saturday and Sunday.
Winds are expected to become more volatile as Hurricane Erin approaches the east coast. Newfoundland and Labrador is not expected to be directly affected by the storm, but fire crews there are hoping for more rain. 2 wildfires are still burning out of control in the province. Karen Pauls has the latest on how some residents are doing.
Christine McNeil is cooking up some fish and chips in her restaurant called The Mess Tent.
We were tasked this morning with 20 meals, we were told, for the operators on the front line. They're doing so much for us. It's nice that I actually have the opportunity to give back to them.
Not far away, the road is blocked off because of Newfoundland's largest fire, which has already destroyed more than 200 structures, houses, garages, and sheds. McNeil's cook lost his home and his truck. Like many here, he's too traumatized to talk about it.
They're absolutely devastated. Their whole lives have just disappeared. They're not sure what they're going to see when they go back in. Some are saying that they will rebuild, and others are saying they don't want to take a chance, and others just say, we're too old, we're just going to go with family or seniors' homes.
There's been rain here in the last day. Good news for firefighters. The 3,000 people who've been forced from their homes and nearly 13,000 still on evacuation alert, like Louise Power, who takes her medication and other necessities with her whenever she leaves the house, just in case.
I'm still worried. It's not over till it's finally out. And that's a worry that everybody around here has on their mind. When is this going to be over?
The province says it could be weeks or even months before people can get into these affected areas. That has implications for kids heading back to school in a few weeks, and for all those people looking for a place to live heading into colder weather. Karen Pauls, CBC News near Job's Cove, Newfoundland.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app, and on YouTube, where you might be watching on this Wednesday, August 20th. This hour on the show, we continue to talk about what is happening with Air Canada and with this tentative deal. So this deal that's on the table for the flight attendants means that the airline is resuming flights. But we're going to look at the political fallout from this. We're also going to talk about some of those most tense days during labor negotiations. And whatever happens in this dispute, how will it affect future disputes in the future here in Canada? So stay tuned. We'll have those discussions. Also this hour on the show, Dr. Bardwash has been doing a bit of a summer series for us this year on our medical column. And today he's talking about back to school. So how do you prepare mentally? What does a nutritional lunch look like? And yes, we'll have that conversation about how to get the kids back on track for proper sleep. Right now, let's get into some local headlines with Matt Humphrey.
Good morning. Some travelers flying Air Canada from Winnipeg say the airline could have had better customer service during its labor disruption. The company has reached a tentative agreement with the flight attendants union, signaling an end to the contract dispute. But many say the possible resolution came too late to save their travel plans, and rebooking and replanning has been frustrating. We'll hear more. And our province has sent water bombers to fight wildfires in Nova Scotia. The Premier says 2 water bombers and a bird dog headed east. And meanwhile, there's a debate in Manitoba how to best avoid a repeat of this summer's devastating fire season. At the bottom of the hour, we'll hear more from 2 experts out of British Columbia, a province no stranger to its own wildfires.
Thanks, Matt.
Back soon.
Matt, people might not know that you actually reported out of that province and lived there for a lot of years.
I did, yeah.
Were there lots of echoes this year?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Every summer it was wildfire season.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And
Yeah.
it's dominated my entire news career for the past 10 years.
Was the smell of smoke different because the size of the province is different?
Good
the terrain is different and you
question.
have mountains in BC?
Yeah, and down in Vancouver, it was rarer to get completely choked out by smoke than in other parts. And on the island, it was rarer. But no, smoke's kind of, trees are a bit different, but smoke's kind of the same. Wildfire smoke's kind of the same stink.
Yeah. It's been new in Manitoba this year, though, in terms of how far it's traveled and some of the worst air quality we've ever had in Winnipeg. So, yeah, we have a lot to learn from BC.
And we'll see what next year brings.
No doubt. All right. Thanks, Matt.
Back soon.
So Matt has that story in the news, by the way. We're also going to have a special coverage of it in the next hour of the program with Rosanna Hempel, who has been leading the journalism on it. So stay tuned. Right now, though, Corey Funk is in with all of your news on the commute for this Wednesday morning and the weather. Hi.
Hello. Yeah, let's start with the weather. Right now in Winnipeg, we're sitting at 17, and it's going to be muggy today, to say the least. High today of 29 with a mix of sun and cloud, but with that humidex, it's going to feel more like 37. So, and a little bit windy, wind gusting 30 gusting to 50 early this afternoon as well. Also, just a heads up right now, I'll have more of an in-depth forecast later, but Brandon, much of western Manitoba right now is actually under a severe thunderstorm watch. Right now. So you could see some thunderstorms this morning. It's a mix of sun and cloud, but yeah, there is a risk for a thunderstorm this morning. So do look out for that. And in terms of your commute right now, if you see anything going on out there and you want to give me an update, if you're walking, biking, driving, haven't heard of anything major issues yet, but if you see something, the number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, we're starting the show this morning in a corner of Winnipeg where we've been following, actually, something that's been a developing story. Next week, the Manitoba Municipal Board is going to weigh in on what's become kind of a battle between the city of Winnipeg and a curling club. So earlier this year, you might recall, City Council did approve a plan to rezone and to subdivide a parking lot next to the Granite Curling Club in the West Broadway neighborhood. It would be part of an overall plan to build an apartment complex that would rent out units at below market rates. That plan, though, quickly drew opposition from the club. Christian Pierce is the board secretary for the Granite Curling Club, and when speaking with CBC's Cameron McLean, he explained why the club decided to appeal the municipal board.
The city has known our concerns for over a year, and they still have not provided a single solution to any of them. And the main 3 concerns are adequate parking, riverbank stabilization work that they promised that they would do, but we've been provided no guarantee they'll actually do it, and a promise on the revenue share from the development if it proceeds. Again, we've been given no guarantees or confirmation in writing that they're going to be able to address any of those concerns.
Let's start with the parking. Like, what are the concerns about the parking?
Well, the concern is that we already don't have enough parking. We do have an informal agreement with Canada Life to use their self-parking lot for overflow in the evenings. So we already don't have enough parking spots to, operate our curling club. And with the development, if it goes forward, we're going to go from 80 spots to 35. And frankly, we won't be able to operate in a sustainable manner financially. And I anticipate we'll lose, well over 100 members, if not more, if people are able to park when they want to curl.
And has there been any further discussion with Canada Life about the use of their parking lot?
Yeah, I had a conversation with their VP of commercial properties, and they said Canada Life isn't willing to enter into any, written agreements with the Granite, the city, or the developer, which I fully understand from their end. They're a private company, and they have no involvement in the development or the Granite.
What are you hoping the municipal board decides?
Well, I'm hoping the municipal board sees the significance and importance of making sure that this development will actually support the Granite, not be a detriment to the Granite. So I'm not going to tell the municipal board how to rule, but I'm just hoping to keep in mind that the concerns that the Granite's raised for over a year now, that those are actually addressed before allowing the development to move forward. The Granite isn't against affordable housing. We know that it's needed. So, the ideal outcome is that the city and the developer can address the Granite's concerns in a meaningful way so that the Granite can continue to operate for decades to come and that the development could also proceed. But the development can only proceed if it can be shown that the development is actually going to support the Granite, which is in accordance with the city's written policy that they follow, and again, not to the detriment of the Granite.
Christian Pierce is board secretary for the Granite Curling Club here in Winnipeg. Now, Planning, Property and Development Committee Chair Councillor Evan Duncan told CBC he did not expect the Granite to refer the plan to the municipal board.
I'm somewhat surprised given that bureaucrats were given direction by council to sort out several of the issues that we heard from the Granite Curling Club itself, including parking, lost revenue. I thought that at the end of the day, when they left council, that it was at a good spot and that everybody would move ahead, and that ultimately we would see not just affordable housing, but below market rate housing and deeply affordable. And that at the end of the day, I appreciate that there's parking spots being lost. I appreciate that it's a long-standing tradition at the Granite Curling Club. And my takeaway from those public hearings were that everyone on council supported that long-standing tradition at the Curling Club, that we were going to continue to make sure that the Curling Club was a successful spot to be and have as a part of Winnipeg's infrastructure. So that leads me to believe that there's an issue with development of housing on that location. That's what I'm left with. I hope that's not the case, but I'm eager to learn what is said at the municipal board in regards to why there's still opposition.
So you're starting to wonder whether or not the issue is the housing project itself and not, details about parking or revenue sharing or those things that have the specific issues that have been raised in the hearings previously.
When you leave a hearing and you're giving direction to the public service to figure out the parking, you're hearing from the applicant, that's the city of Winnipeg, that's discussed with the U of M not-for-profit group, that they would give profits back to make the Granite Curling Club whole on whatever monthly parking that they are currently charging Great West Life employees. When you hear those things and there's still an appeal coming here to the municipal board, I'm confused on what it is exactly that they're not liking, not on board with, and it pushes me towards they just don't want housing there.
Why do you think this project should go ahead?
Because there are Winnipeggers out there who cannot afford rent, they cannot afford a mortgage, they cannot find housing. This is targeting a certain demographic that is in regular contact with the city of Winnipeg, all councillors. This is not unique to any area, that say, housing is no longer affordable in this city. There is now an argument to be had. Is our housing stock getting to the point where, vacancy rate could potentially be coming down? Sure, there's an argument to be had there. Let's learn about that more in the months to come. But at the end of the day, there is no argument. Housing is still not affordable for Winnipeggers as we currently stand.
That was Planning and Property Development Committee Chair Councillor Evan Duncan speaking with CBC's Cameron McLean about housing as it relates to the development plans for the Granite Curling Club. Now, I want to mention that we have been doing a housing series here on Information Radio, and still ahead today on the show, after 7 o'clock, the founder of St. Boniface Street Links will join us. She says they actually have more housing right now than people to move in. Now, this is the city waits for new builds to come online. This is existing housing, and it's not necessarily all housing that is ready for people to move in. She says that people need attention, but so do the properties that could be part of the solution as we move forward to try to help with the homelessness crisis here. So our series looking more deeply at the houseless crisis and the solutions will continue here after 7.
If it happened today, find out today. That's the power of having the news in your hand. Get late-breaking news from reporters across the country, straight to your mobile device. Customize your experience with news from your region and what matters to you. Whether it's big headlines, detailed articles, live events, or on-demand video, CBC News has got you covered. Connect to the world. Download the free CBC News app or visit cbcnews.ca.
Beautiful start to the morning. What do they say? Red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. That's going to be true later today, though, in Winnipeg, that is. Right now, there's a severe thunderstorm watch in western Manitoba. We're going to be very muggy today across most of the south. Winnipeg's high is 29 with humidex 37. Currently, though, it's clear with that beautiful sky with that red hue, and it is 17 degrees. Well, next on the show, ongoing coverage of the Air Canada flight attendants and their labor dispute continues. They have returned to the job, not by order, but through a tentative deal that was worked out at the bargaining table. Now, the jobs minister demanded that workers return on Monday. Their union CUPE said no, and within less than a day, there was a tentative deal struck. Air Canada says that flights should be back to normal within 10 days. So those are the details that we continue to reiterate, but let's find out what more we know. To talk about that, political journalist David Moskrop is with us from Ottawa. Good morning.
Good morning.
So do we know anything more about what's in this tentative deal?
Yeah, the latest is that it looks like flight attendants are going to be paid for ground time, which was the core sticking point in these negotiations. It looks like they're going to get about 50% of their wages for that time. I think that's the latest. But the ground time pay itself is a huge advancement and a big win for flight attendants.
What impact do you think that this could have on negotiations at other airlines?
I mean, I think this is going to advance a new industry standard. For years when this came up, the reply from employers was, well, the industry standard is you're paid for time in the air. You're not paid for time on the ground, planing, deplaning, emergency evacuations, and so on. And CUPE said that this accounted for about 35 hours a month of unpaid labor. And so now Air Canada employees, flight attendants, are kind of at the leading edge of this new industry standard in Canada and probably throughout North America. So that's kind of a big deal.
Is the impact, do you think, of that unpaid work piece, if you extrapolate it out, we're going to have a full interview about this later, but is that going to be felt in other industries, do you think? And what will that mean to employers negotiating in the future?
Well, I mean, certainly I would think it's going to make a big difference in the airline industry where it's a common practice to have these unpaid hours for flight attendants, but also for pilots. So that's going to be, I think, the test case, basically, right? And you have a federal investigation now that was kind of haphazardly launched in the midst of all this into unpaid work in the airline industry. But I expect that people are going to start to say, whoa, what about my industry? So if this advances the standard across industries, it'll be good for all workers, and it very well may. But it also, on the employer side, says to them, you can't rely on the government every time to step in and order workers back to the job if they're going to strike and into binding arbitration. You actually have to show up at the table and argue in good faith and show up with the intention of making a deal, not just stalling for time.
What's your sense of how this unfolded? You were just alluding to some of it. So the Canadian Industrial Relations Board was the body that was asked to intervene and order flight attendants back. How would you describe the role that they played?
This was kind of interesting because with Section 107 of the Labor Code, the minister can basically write to the board and say, order workers back to work, end this strike. And that's pretty extraordinary, because typically if the feds were going to do that, they would have to go into the House of Commons and debate back to work legislation, and it was kind of messy. But now, in recent years, the trend has been to have the minister sign a piece of paper and off you go, and the board would just sort of rubber stamp it. In this instance, the board did rubber stamp it, but they also declined to ask the courts to enforce the order. They basically said, okay, yeah, this is legal, you're allowed to do this, but we're not going to ask for an enforcement because it's not going to help things. And I think that reflects the fact that the minister ordered this 12 hours after the strike was launched. So the board, did its job and acted as a bit of a rubber stamp, but I think it also threw a bit of an elbow at the federal government and probably helped secure the deal for the union a little bit.
We will leave it there this morning. As I mentioned, we have more on the aspect of unpaid work coming up in the program. Thank you very much for walking us through what we know so far.
Thanks so much for having me.
That is a political journalist, David Moskrop, joining us live via Zoom this morning. So later, as I mentioned, an expert on labor and social movements who has studied the loopholes, he calls them, in the Canada Labor Code that he says lead to unpaid labor is going to join us. So that's coming up in an interview later on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're with CBC this morning, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. And a little music to get us to the news here at the 6:30 time. This comes from a Vancouver-born singer-songwriter who's now based down in the States in Atlanta. Liv Avery. She spent time also touring Russia as a backup singer. And now she's starting to release music under her name. This is Interpersonal. Liv Avery and her song Interpersonal on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us on a Wednesday morning here. We're in August 20th already. And if you want to call us with any issues in traffic, by the way, give us a call, 788-3093. Now, I know it's not the weather line, but I am curious what it looks like out in Westman. It's starting to get brighter downtown here in Winnipeg, but we know there's a severe thunderstorm watch for the Westman region this morning. So 788-3093 if you're spotting any active weather you want to report, you can put that in the traffic line too. I'm looking ahead at business news this morning, and there's some changes coming to the U.S. Tariffs on steel and aluminum. There's also new products, 407 new product categories being added to the tariff list. And we'll get into that with business right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. At 6:30, we're at 17 degrees with mostly clear skies over downtown Winnipeg. We are expecting a sticky day ahead with a humidex value at 37. Good morning. I'm Matt Humphrey. Air Canada flights are back in the skies, but not all of the airline's customers are happy following the labor disruption. Stephanie Enns was supposed to fly from Winnipeg to New Brunswick last weekend, but her flight was canceled because the airline's flight attendants were on strike. She says it was nearly impossible to get assistance from Air Canada online, so she went to the Winnipeg airport to find help there.
It's bonkers to me. If they wanted to avoid disruption, then they should have hired more staff to answer phones, or I don't know, or improve their online booking, rebooking options.
Air Canada says thousands of staff members are working to help get travelers rebooked, but the airline is also asking for patience as it resumes operations. An unidentified woman found dead at the Manwin Hotel in Winnipeg a year ago now has a name after being gifted an Indigenous one. Last Thursday, Winnipeg police and others asked for help to figure out who she was. Yesterday, we're told she's Melanie McKay from Garden Hill, and her parents have come here to claim her remains. The death was not criminal. Some First Nations officials believe she could have been identified earlier because she had a metal plate implanted in her collarbone. Wildfire experts say Manitoba needs better forest management practices to help prevent devastating wildfires. They agree climate change will mean drier forests and warmer temperatures, but there's no clear consensus on what best practices Manitoba should adopt. Robert Gray is a fire ecologist and consultant in British Columbia. He says fire-prone communities can become more resilient by adopting practices such as prescribed burning, clearing, and thinning trees, and restoring grasslands. Gray says provinces should better regulate the forest industry with fire management in mind.
It's at an inflection point right now where they're going to have to look seriously at how do you maintain the industry? And that means shifting this focus to an objective focused on wildland fire and not just timber harvesting.
But another expert says not everyone wants forests cleared. Wildland fire professor Mike Flanagan says fire bans, restrictions on backcountry travel, and programs to make homes more fire smart would be more effective. And you can hear more about this story just before the 8 o'clock news on Information Radio. Meanwhile, Manitoba has sent water bombers to fight wildfires in Nova Scotia. Premier Wab Kinew says 2 bombers and a bird dog were headed out east. On Tuesday, the largest wildfire in Nova Scotia was burning out of control in the Annapolis Valley and was an estimated 32 square kilometers in size. Manitoba is reporting more than 150 fires, and we remain under a provincial state of emergency that'll be in place at least until Friday. Winnipeg police are asking a court to find a care home in contempt for refusing to hand over documents. The information is related to a 90-year-old woman who died last year, a week after falling out of bed. The CBC's Caitlin Garlick explains.
The saga started in February when police got an order requiring Concordia Place to disclose a list of information related to the woman's death. The care home refused and is trying to get a court to quash the production order police got from a judge. It's arguing provincial legislation prevents it from handing over the documents because they're linked to an internal investigation that's supposed to be confidential. Now, Winnipeg police are also going to court, trying to have the care home found in contempt for refusing to comply with the production order and force Concordia Place to turn over the information. The care home says while the woman had a fractured leg after the fall last October, there's no evidence the incident caused her death. Caitlin Garlick, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And finally, a traveling exhibit arrived in Carman yesterday with the goal of destigmatizing survivors of sexual assault. It's called What Were You Wearing? Genesis House has set up mannequins in a park and dressed them in clothes similar to what survivors wore when they were sexually assaulted. There were mannequins wearing nurses' scrubs, pajamas, even hockey equipment. Angela Braun is with Genesis House, which runs a crisis shelter in south central Manitoba. She says they're trying to counter stereotypes, which question why someone was sexually assaulted.
What we want to send is that it's not your fault, it's never been your fault, that this exhibit is going to bring that forward in community to really kind of go against that stereotype that says, what were you wearing? Why were you there by yourself? That is never the victim's responsibility. It is about power and control.
The exhibit was on display in Morden and Winkler earlier this summer before coming to Carman this week. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg.
Thank you, Matt Humphrey.
Back soon.
And Corey Funk's here now with your weather and traffic.
So right now in Winnipeg, we're sitting at 17, and it is going to be muggy and hot pretty much right throughout the province today, including up north. But let's start here in Winnipeg. 17, heading for a high today of 29. You can expect a mix of sun and cloud, but that humidex is going to make it feel more like 30. 7. So got to be pretty hot. Tonight, though, there is also showers or thunderstorms. Overnight here, it's going to be about 18 or so. So look out for that. Let's turn to Brandon right now, which actually right now is under a severe thunderstorm watch. And that's actually much of western Manitoba and the Interlake as well under the severe thunderstorm watch. And then in the Interlake area there, it's between about Arborg and Grand Rapids where that severe thunderstorm watch is in place. And then Brandon and then pretty much everything in western Manitoba right now is under that severe thunderstorm watch as well. You're 16 right now, Brandon. You're heading up to 31 today is going to be your high. But then with that, humidex is going to feel more like 39. There is a chance of showers this afternoon as well. But then also showers or thunderstorms in the evening too. So pretty much all day, you might get a chance of thunderstorms. Similar case in Dauphin as well, pretty much a carbon copy of what you just heard in Brandon, also a severe thunderstorm watch in effect. And then also Thompson as well. Right now you are at 12, but you're heading for a high today of 26. Humidex is going to feel more like 31, going to dip down to 13 overnight. As for your commute, haven't heard of any major issues out there, but if you do see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
All right, let's get to business news. Christelle Ramlakan is here. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So trade news today again. How is the U.S. changing tariffs on steel and aluminum, and can you break down what they're adding here to this list?
Yeah, so the U.S. is hiking steel and aluminum tariffs on more than 400 products, including wind turbines, cranes, appliances, bulldozers, and other heavy equipment, along with rail cars, motorcycles, marine engines, and furniture. So 407 product categories are being added to the list. So there is a 50% tariff on any steel and aluminum content, plus the country rate on the other content in products. And we know that the U.S. has different rates on different countries when it comes to tariffs. Now, the move represents more than $200 billion in imports last year. And there are estimates this will raise the overall effective tariff rate by around 1% south of the border. The U.S. is also adding imported parts for automotive exhaust systems and electrical steel needed for electric vehicles to the new tariffs. Now, a group of foreign automakers is urging the U.S. not to do this. They say the U.S. does not have the domestic capacity to handle the current demand. But yeah, these new tariffs take effect immediately. And they also cover things like compressors, pumps, and the metal in imported cosmetics and packaging like aerosol cans.
It gets very complicated very fast, doesn't it? Yeah. All right, let's talk about students. They're back in session in about 2 weeks here in Manitoba, back in school. Many have adopted the use of artificial intelligence in their schoolwork. We had a teacher actually on talking about that last week. But how are Canadian universities embracing the tech?
Well, universities are incorporating artificial intelligence in their teaching plans as more students and instructors opt to use the rapidly evolving technology. So several large institutions, including McGill University, University of Toronto, and York University, say they are adopting certain AI tools because they can enhance learning. So those include tested tools that help students do things like summarize academic research or assist professors in course planning. So the shift comes as post-secondary students' AI use continues to grow. A survey conducted late last year by an online learning platform found that about 78% of Canadian students used AI to study or complete their schoolwork. So that's a lot of students. And, some say offering AI tools through schools' IT infrastructure ensures they are vetted properly to address privacy risks and ensure data protection. But despite this huge uptake, many professors are still worried about bias in AI models, ethical and privacy issues, and the technology's environmental impact. And the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations says AI technologies must complement the learning experience and that universities should discourage the use of AI for evaluations and screening student work. So, marking work. The Alliance says research shows untested AI systems can introduce bias and discriminatory practices against certain student groups.
What's happening in the markets this morning? What do the numbers look like, Crystal?
So in Europe, stocks are lower. Germany is down. The UK is up. France is up. In Asia, markets are declining. Japan is down. Shanghai is up. Hong Kong is up. Oil is up 71 cents to 63.06 US per barrel. Gold is up 14.10 to $3,328.10 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.04 of a cent to 72.1 cents US.
All right, Crystal, thank you very much as always.
Thank you, Marcy.
Crystal Ramlicam with our business news. Thanks for spending time with us here on Information Radio on this Wednesday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. Brad and Corey and May behind the glass today. It is 6:41 a.m. and soon the time's going to matter even more in the morning because you might be having a busier household, getting everybody ready to head out the door. Back to school is in a couple of weeks now, and any caregiver can attest that there's a real challenge switching from summer school to school mode. That challenge is real. So on his summer health series of topics, how to get ready for it. Next, a conversation with our health contributor, Dr. Raj Bhardwaj.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what is the most important thing that parents, in your view, should do health-wise before sending kids back to school?
I don't think there's one most important thing, but scheduling a health check with your family doctor, if you're lucky enough to have one these days, is very helpful because they can help you with a comprehensive review of your child's health. If you get a chance, they can make sure immunizations are up to date or at least booked. During COVID, a lot of kids fell behind on their immunizations, and catching them up is a good idea. We can also do things like check in on their physical growth and development. We can update any medications that they might be on through the year, like asthma puffers or ADHD meds or allergy meds, things like that. And make sure that their doses are still appropriate for all those meds. And then you can also check in with them if you've had any health concerns through the summer. And then, I say doctors, but don't forget eye doctors and dentists as well. Vision problems, dental problems can have a huge impact on learning.
Let's talk about something that a lot of families do struggle with, which is getting back to that sleep routine after the summer. Do you have advice on that?
Ooh, yeah. So sleep is so foundational, right? It's foundational to learning and socializing and mood and even growth. So teenagers need around 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night. Younger school-age kids need about 9 to 12. And about 1 in 4 Canadian kids aren't getting enough sleep. So summer sleep schedules, they're chaotic, and that's fine. But now is sort of the time to start reinforcing and building up the school year routine. So ideally, we want to start on this, 2-3 weeks before school starts. And, the first thing you can do is just move bedtime 15 minutes earlier every few nights until you reach the target. And then a bedtime routine, a bedtime wind down is so important. And there's a bunch of different things you can think about depending on your particular circumstances, right? But things like no screens for an hour before bed, dimming the lights, closing the curtains, right? Because we get a lot of evening sun. Some quiet reading, relaxing music. Another idea that a lot of families have success with is the idea of bath, book, and bed. But ideally, you want to get that routine built for the nighttime and also a morning routine as well. And you want to try to keep those, relatively stable even through the weekend so that you don't sort of end up jet lagging yourself each weekend. And then, this is sort of the opposite of sleep, but getting enough movement impacts sleep a lot. So the guideline for school-age kids is at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous activities per day. And if they get that, then they're more likely to be tired at night, right? And also, of course, limiting recreational screen time to no more than 2 hours a day.
Now, we often hear of something called the September spike in infections as kids head back to school. Do you have advice about how to stay healthy, in the weeks ahead?
Yeah, for sure. So, we saw during the pandemic that basic hygiene practices are super effective at slowing the spread of germs. So review things like proper hand washing and, make sure they've got a little thing of hand sanitizer clipped onto their backpack if soap and water isn't easily accessible. Remember that for some germs, especially ones that cause like stomach infections, soap and water is actually more effective than hand sanitizer. And of course, all the hand washing in the world isn't going to help if kids are then, slurping on each other's water bottles or sharing each other's lip gloss or whatever. So, especially if your child plays on a sports team through the year, make sure that they have their own water bottle and don't be shy, label it in huge letters or colored tape or something with their name on it so that they don't share. This summer, I saw a bunch of kids who were in a sports tournament in town, and basically the entire team was out with the sick bug, with the same bug, and it was probably from sharing water bottles. But apart from surfaces, so hand washing, not slurping on each other's water bottles and stuff, but cleaning the air is super effective in terms of limiting transmission of germs. So I would encourage parents to talk to teachers and principals and school leaders about what they're doing to improve air quality in schools. We know that cleaner, fresher air is associated with fewer infections, fewer missed days due to illness, better learning, better grades, and it's better for the health of the teachers as well. So we should all be working towards cleaner air in school. And then, unfortunately, kids get sick. Everyone gets sick, right? So have a plan, have several plans really for when your kids do get sick and they need to stay home from school. Sending kids, to school when they're sick, it spreads their germs. They often don't get a lot out of school on those days anyway. So try to have a plan for when they are sick and need to stay home.
Now, before you go, parents and kids have obviously also become a lot more aware of their mental health and emotional needs, the aspects of returning to school. What should parents watch for there?
Yeah, this is super important. I mean, we know that some years, or sometimes just for some kids, back to school is really fun and exciting, but other years it can be really challenging and bring some anxiety. So it's normal to take a few weeks to adjust to new routines and teachers and expectations and stuff, but watch for changes that stay after those first few weeks, right? So changes like decreased appetite or, problems with sleep or behavior, reluctance to go to school that wasn't there before, or even more vague sort of physical symptoms, like headaches and stomach aches and stuff, and get them checked out if you're concerned at all. But the other thing is communication is key. And there are a lot of better questions to ask other than how was school. Whenever I ask how was school, I usually get fine. Then that doesn't really open up the door to more conversation. So try asking things like, what was your favorite part of the day? Or, what was the most interesting thing you learned today? Or even just who did you sit with at lunchtime or who did you play with at recess? And that kind of gets you a little bit of insight into, are they making friends? Are they hanging out with the same people? Things like that. And remember, your kids better than anyone else. So trust your instincts and be patient with the process. You don't have to be perfect all the time. But remember, you're also not in this alone. Teachers and principals and doctors and school counselors, we're all part of the team that is working to support your child's well-being and learning. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask for help. And have a great school year.
All right, Dr. Bardwash, thank you.
My pleasure.
So 2 weeks from today will be the first day of class in the Winnipeg School Division, the city of Winnipeg's largest, and then across the province it rolls out from there. That is our How to Get Ready guide on our medical column today, a special summer series that Dr. Raj Bardwash has been doing.
Breaking tonight. Every day,
The tariffs are very good. They're very powerful.
Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves.
We bring context to chaos.
What are the consequences of this action?
We must retaliate.
In our own backyard.
Come on! It's a plane crash!
And beyond our borders.
It's the scene of an airstrike.
You're gambling with World War III.
Negotiations are ongoing.
From the source you can trust.
It's time to dig deeper into the story.
The National, Canada's newscast. Tonight on CBC.
10 to 7 the time right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to CBC's Morning Show live in downtown Winnipeg, where it's 17 degrees and it's clear. Not so much to the west. We've got a severe thunderstorm watch in Westman. Extends all up through the Interlake as well, between Arborg and Grand Rapids, and then Brandon included in this and all over the west. So you're watching for storms. It's going to get wet in Winnipeg as well, but we suspect that's not going to start until tonight, and then tomorrow looks like a very wet day. But right now, this hour, it is 17 in Winnipeg. It is also still clear in Brandon, 16 degrees, but watching for storms. And in Thompson, there's shallow fog being reported this morning, and the current condition is 12 degrees. Well, next on the show, what do skibidi, delulu, and tradwives have in common? They were all new words added to the Cambridge Dictionary this year. We want to talk about language because this is always a fun one when we try to understand these words. Nicole Rosen's here to discuss it with us on the show. She's here via Zoom. She's head of linguistics over at the University of Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning.
I don't even know if I'm saying it right, Nicole. So skibidi or skibidi?
Skibbity.
Skibbity. Okay, I was entirely wrong. What does it mean?
Well, it's a hard one to define because it is a nonsense word. It's something that's sort of put into a sentence for effect. So, it's not a noun, it's not a verb, it's not an actual thing or an action. It's just a word that you put in to add some kind of effect and I don't use it myself, to be honest. So it's a Gen Alpha thing. Gen Alpha also being a new word that's been entered into the dictionary.
So skibbity is like, I've read it might mean, it could be cool or bad, or does it depend on tone then? Like if I think
it's dependent on the contest. Yeah, it's dependent on the context.
Okay.
If somebody's skibbity or something is skibbity, that could be good, it could be bad. It just kind of depends on what's happening around you. Yeah, it's all dependent on context. So,
okay. Skibbity answer.
Yes, sure.
I want to go into some of the other new words here, if I may, for a moment. So, delulu, what does that mean?
So that's a short form of delusional, which kind of makes sense, right?
Okay.
But it seems to have the extra connotation of deliberately, deluding yourself. So if you believe something that's not true and you know it to not be true, you're being delulu.
Yep. You mentioned Gen Alpha. I wonder, a lot of the words that are being added, not just this year, but in recent years, they do come from those younger generations. Why is that?
It's because the young people are the innovators. They're the ones that are changing culture. They are the ones that sort of dictate fashion, and language can also be a type of fashion, especially when you're talking about things like slang and sort of cultural words. They're, when there's newer things being added to culture, they're the ones that are defining it and speaking to it, and they're the ones that change things, just like we did when we were young.
I'm going to sort of ask questions about the dictionary, but also then get to these words because people often want to hear some of them throughout, right? So I mentioned tradwives. Where's that coming from? I can guess, but...
Yeah, I mean, that comes from traditional wife. I think, again, it has sort of an extra online context or online meaning, or because there's these YouTubers or people on TikTok, and there's these traditional wives as part of the sort of traditional or white supremacy kind of society, where wives are, at home and doing sort of traditional things like cooking and cleaning and things like that. And then they post these things on the internet, and, giving tips on how to be a trad wife and why it's so important to be a trad wife and things like that. So it's, traditional wife is not a new concept, but the way it's being done in society and online is different and new, and so there's a new word kind of that goes along with that.
What else is sticking out for you when you look at the new words from this year?
Well, a lot of them have to do with online kind of things, right? And because that makes sense, there's a lot of online or languages used online a lot more now, right? And whereas new words used to be innovated in face-to-face kind of mode, now a lot of it is online because that's how people are communicating and that's how more people are communicating. So there's this sort of democratization of language where anyone and everyone can put something out there. If it's on social media, then somebody can latch onto it and run with it. Whereas before you had to be an author or you had to be a journalist in order to really add words and put words into your newspaper or into your novel or your poem. Now anyone can do it.
In terms of why so many of them seem to be slang, or shortened, right? Trad wives, delulu, right? Somebody's going to be out there listening and saying, why don't we just say delusional? Why do we have to have delulu added? What do you think of the reaction that new words get when they're added to the dictionary? Is that just forevermore people get a bit conservative and precious about language?
Yeah, that really is mostly what it is. For millennia, people have been complaining about the way younger people speak, right? And so it's not really any different than that. There's a different sort of flavor added to these words. So it's not just about new words, but also about new meanings for words. And that gets changed. So delulu, there's a little extra connotation there that's not just simply the word delusional. So it does have a little extra added sort of bonus meaning that changes a little bit. And so it makes sense to have it kind of added because when words change meanings, you need to understand all of the different meanings of that word, not just the one traditional one.
You also, I understand, judge something called the Word of the Year with the American Dialect Society. Do you have memorable words from over the years in that role? Like, what a cool thing to judge.
Yeah, it's a public event, and so lots of people can submit their words online. It happens in November or December, and then the vote takes place in early January for the previous year. And a lot of them have traditionally been had been political often, but now they are seeming to be a little bit more online. One of the ones I liked was the word hashtag, but used as a word, right? So when people used to say hashtag this or hashtag that, I thought that was really kind of a neat one because a hashtag is just a piece of punctuation, right? And it's not usually something we talk about in oral language, but this one became one. And so there was such a strong influence of the written sort of online culture into everyday oral spaces that we started using it in oral language as well. And I thought that one was pretty neat. Not that anyone uses it anymore, but
right?
It was very important at the time.
I'm just kidding. All right. Thank you for being with us this morning. Appreciate it. And for introducing us to Skibbity.
Thank you.
That is Nicole Rosen with us via Zoom this morning. She's head of the linguistics at the University of Manitoba. And we're talking about the new words that have just been added to the Cambridge Dictionary this year. And one of them is skibbity. It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. Here is Matt Humphrey now with more serious news this morning to cover our headlines and stories that are developing in Manitoba.
Good morning. A woman who was found dead at a Winnipeg hotel more than a year ago has been identified by her family as Melanie McKay, days after a new sketch of the previously unidentified woman was shared with the public. We'll hear more details at 7:30. And police are asking a court to find a Winnipeg personal care home in contempt because the home refused to hand over information from a critical incident report conducted after a 90-year-old woman died there following a fall out of bed last October. We'll hear more after World Report.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Back soon.
In the next hour, wildfire experts on how Manitoba could better prevent wildfires in the future. CBC's Rosanna Hempel has been looking into this, as you've been hearing on the news. She's going to join us in the next hour. Also in the next hour of Information Radio, low barrier housing should not mean bed bugs and cockroaches, but it might mean an older building, and that can be a great place to start if you've been living on a riverbank, for example. Now, all of that sentiment is coming from the founder of St. Boniface Street Links. She believes some places should be unshuttered and fixed up to help Manitobans work their way out of homelessness, especially as we have a shortage of spaces and low barrier housing. So we're going to talk to her. She's a part of our series on housing we've been looking at this summer, so stay tuned. It's 1 minute to 7 o'clock right now, and it is muggy, 17 degrees and clear. With Humidex today, it's going to feel like 37 in Winnipeg. Our actual high is 29. If you need us on the commute, call us, 788-3093. World Report's next. Stay with us. It's 1 minute to 7.
Today on The Current.
I'm Rebecca Zandbergen. If you were out for a stroll today, you probably saw someone wearing a weighted vest. They are one of the most recent fitness trends, and they are all over social media. But do they actually help your workout?
My body starts to think that I weigh 180 pounds and burns calories like a 180-pound person would.
We weigh the pros and cons coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Air Canada flight attendants are in the process of ratifying the contract agreement that ended their strike. Their union reached a deal with the airline. It brought workers off the picket lines. But as Yasmin Khanea reports, the effects of the strike will be felt for days.
Air Canada planes are in the sky once again, but the airline says passengers should still expect cancellations in the coming days while it returns to normal operations.
We had a flight on Monday and it was cancelled. I think it was Sunday.
Spanish tourist Carlos Reyes and his family are stuck in Vancouver, unable to catch a flight until the end of the week, spending hundreds of dollars on hotels in the meantime.
Air Canada doesn't pay anything. They say it's a strike, and so they are not responsible for the costs of the hotel.
But hotels aren't an option for everyone.
So I slept in chairs on the airport last night.
Kate Brown waited for hours at Vancouver International Airport to return to Toronto.
I'm really stressed and I really want to take a shower and just lie in a proper bed.
Air Canada estimates 500,000 passengers have been affected by the strike. Vancouver resident Lucy Bingfield and her partner have lost days off their Portugal trip, but say it's worth it.
At the end of the day, what's more important, us going on vacation or people getting paid for the actual work they do? Yeah.
Air Canada says it could take more than a week for operations to return to normal. Yasmin Khanea, CBC News, Vancouver.
Canada Post and the union representing its workers are back at the bargaining table today. The union is upholding a ban on overtime work. Postal workers rejected the Crown Corporation's latest offer a few weeks ago. The offer would have included wage hikes of around 13% over 4 years and the addition of part-time workers. Israel's government has approved a controversial plan to expand a Jewish settlement in the occupied Palestinian territories. Critics say it will further isolate East Jerusalem from the West Bank and could put any remaining hopes for a Palestinian state at risk. Our senior international correspondent, Margaret Evans, has more on the story.
A lonely wind working its way through empty barrel drums in a hilltop junkyard on the edge of El Azariya, a Palestinian town just opposite Male Adumim, one of the largest Jewish settlements in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, on course to get even bigger. Palestinian shopkeepers on the main street into town say Israel has given them notice that demolition orders delivered years ago will be enforced. Mohammed Faroun runs a cafe and ice cream parlor.
It's like heartbreaking stuff when you see all your effort, hard work, for the 4 or 5 years goes by a piece of paper.
All Israeli settlements are considered illegal under international law. There are about 40,000 residents in Male Adumim. Its mayor, Guy Ifrach, thinks building on more than 3,000 housing units will start in about 6 months. I think it's right that on the strategic level, Male Adumim will be connected to Jerusalem, he says. Jerusalem is our capital city. The plan has been on the books for decades, but the international community has pressured Israel into shelving it in the past, fearful that it would destroy lingering Palestinian hopes for a two-state solution with a capital in East Jerusalem. Last week, Israeli finance minister and hardline settler leader Bezalel Smotrich said the E1 plan would do exactly that, bury the idea of a Palestinian state. Margaret Evans, CBC News, in the occupied West Bank.
An Israeli military official says about 60,000 reservists will be called up before the IDF pushes forward with its ground offensive into Gaza City. The call-up notices could be sent in the coming days, and reservists will be ordered to report for duty in September. The official told Reuters news agency the reservists could be in the Air Force, intelligence, or supporting roles, or they may replace active duty soldiers stationed outside Gaza. The statement comes as Israel is still under pressure to respond to a 60-day ceasefire deal. Hamas has already agreed. Israel is expected to respond by Friday. A member of the Irish rap group Kneecap is back in a London court today on terrorism charges. The rapper, who goes by Mo Chara, was surrounded by hundreds of supporters as he entered the courthouse. The 27-year-old is charged under the Terrorism Act. He allegedly waved the flag of the banned militant group Hezbollah at a gig in London last year. Kneecap is a Belfast-based group. Its members support the Republican cause of uniting Northern Ireland with the Republic of Ireland, and they regularly display pro-Palestinian messages during their shows. They have said this charge is an attempt to silence them. Police are searching for a Norwegian trekker missing in northern Manitoba. RCMP say they were alerted when just one of his dogs made it to his next planned stop. The terrain is challenging, the wildlife threatening, and as Alexander Silberman reports, a local First Nation is also leading a search for the missing man.
Some workers at York Factory found his dog by the riverbank resting with no sign of Stefan.
Fort Severn Chief Matthew Kekakaspin says his community sprung into action after hearing Norwegian hiker Stefan Scholtelvik was reported missing in the wilderness of northern Manitoba. A local team chartered a helicopter, spending several days searching from the skies near Hudson Bay.
He's a human being, and he needs our help. Time is at the essence. There's wild animals out there.
The Northern Ontario First Nation has paused their search for now due to mounting costs. They say they spent $70,000 to rent a helicopter. But Manitoba RCMP say they're continuing to look for Scholtelvik, a 29-year-old wilderness adventurer. He last made contact near York Factory on Thursday, reporting one of his two dogs was lost to a wolf attack. The trekker was attempting to travel on foot from James Bay to Alaska.
So hard to physically walk that terrain.
Sergeant Paul Monaig is with the Manitoba RCMP. He says the conditions in the remote northern area are challenging, with most of it covered in swampy peatlands. Crews have been searching with drones and helicopters.
Polar bears are very active in that area. Wolves are very active.
Monaig says the search will focus around the fast-moving Hayes River, looking for any sign of the missing trekker. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Regina.
Crews in Nova Scotia say they are making progress with a large wildfire in Annapolis County. The Long Lake fire has not grown since Monday night. Manager of Fire Protection Scott Tingley says favorable weather has helped, but he expects challenging days ahead.
Where there's no rain in the forecast, it's still going to take significant effort to get it to a being held or under control status. We're making progress, but we still have a ways to go.
Forecasters are predicting volatile winds. Hurricane Erin is approaching the region, but they say the storm will be too far offshore for rain. Canada is reducing the number of newcomers admitted into the country, but it is making some exceptions. The federal government wants to increase French speakers settling outside Quebec. As the CBC's Ian Fraze tells us, Francophone admissions have been low for decades.
A lot of areas, especially rural areas, are not speaking French as much.
Leanne Waugh is concerned about the decline of the French language outside Quebec. She's with FCFA, an organization representing Francophones in much of Canada. In 2003, the government announced a target: 4.4% of annual permanent residents coming here, but not living in Quebec, be French speakers. It took until 2022 to hit that number. Now the feds have raised the bar. to 12%.
Because if we do not work on the demographic weight, a lot of our communities may disappear.
To avoid this, Mark Carney's Liberals promised in the last election to hit the target by 2029, saying the proportion of French speakers must return to the levels of decades ago. The pledge to boost numbers in this category comes as the government is reducing immigration overall. But Waugh says having more French speakers is about catching up.
And look at what we need to make sure there's still growth. That's why we're looking at the 12%.
In New Brunswick, Sebastian Waugh co-owns a distillery. His company signed up for an immigration program to recruit Francophones.
We are still speaking the French language, and to have immigrants that have the same language as us is a link.
He now says they're receiving at least 10 applications a day from Francophones in other countries. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Ottawa.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcuso. Welcome to your Wednesday. I'm here with our team at Information Radio, and thank you for joining us. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app, and YouTube. Sticky and hot today, and we have a severe thunderstorm watch actually in the western part of the province this morning. This hour on the show, we're going to continue talking about housing. The founder of St. Boniface StreetLink says they actually have more housing right now than people to move in. This as the city waits for new builds to come online. Stay tuned as our series looking more deeply at the homeless crisis and the solutions continues this half hour. Marion Willis is here. She'll explain. In addition, this hour on the program coming up at 7:40, for a lot of people who share stories of sexual assault, they still face this question. Well, what were you wearing? It's a question rooted in victim blaming, and it still persists today in our communities. A Manitoba shelter is confronting that head on. They're doing so with art, and we're going to talk about their display. So that is coming up at 7:40 right now. No, that's coming up at 7:40, but right now coming up is Matt Humphrey, who's here with other stories and headlines, including one about fires. Hi, Matt.
Yes, good morning. Experts say Manitoba needs better forest management practices to mitigate and prevent the devastating effects of the wildfires that we've seen. But there isn't a clear consensus on the best course forward. At the bottom of the hour, we'll hear advice from experts out of British Columbia. All agree climate change is an issue, but there are disagreements over how to best deal with that. And of course, British Columbia is no stranger to dealing with its own wildfires. And Air Canada has reached a tentative agreement with the union representing some 10,000 flight attendants, signaling an end to their contract dispute. And while that will come as a relief to many travelers, for some Canadians, especially some flying out of Winnipeg, the news came too late to save their trips. We'll hear reaction to everything that's happened with the labor dispute at Air Canada at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Back soon.
And let's get into weather and traffic now. Corey Funk's covering both. Hey, Corey.
Hello. Yeah, so we're in for a very muggy day today, pretty much right across the province. Right now, Winnipeg at the Forks sitting at 17. Going to be warming up to 29 today with a mix of sun and cloud. You could expect some fog patches this morning that'll dissipate, but it's going to feel this afternoon more like 37 with that humidex. So it's definitely shorts weather out there. A couple other things to keep an eye out for. There is a severe thunderstorm watch in effect for much of western Manitoba, pretty much everything Brandon west, but then also includes the interlake between Arborg and Grand Rapids, but even further west of that around the Blood Vein area as well, pretty much right up to the Ontario border in kind of northern central Manitoba. So heads up for that. And one other thing, in Thompson and northern Manitoba, there's actually a rainfall warning in effect for starting tomorrow morning. And Environment Canada says that starting around tomorrow morning, the parts of northern Manitoba could get as much as 50 to 70 millimeters of rain.
Bring it on.
Bring it on.
Like
exactly.
Really, bring
yes.
it on.
So I'm sure that is welcome news to hear for that part of the province. Keep an eye on that. Of course, things can change between now and then, but that's just a heads up from Environment Canada. If you see anything else going on, though, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. Haven't heard of any major issues out there. That number to call, though, 204-788-3093.
Well, for the last 3 weeks or so on the show, we have been taking a deeper look inside the lives of people who are taking their first steps away from being homeless in Winnipeg. On Tuesday, we met 24-year-old Gina Wilson. She lives in a transitional housing block on Fountain Street now that's privately owned by Sam Turand. Turand has partnered with St. Boniface Street Links, which pays for on-site security and programming at that housing block. We also met Dale Boutillier, who went from bus shacks in St. James, he lived there for years, to living in a bachelor suite now in East Kildonan, where I visited him. We spoke as well to Anna Moore and Caden McCron, who were living on a city riverbank until they connected with the man on site, who was at first, as Caden describes, you'll hear that in a moment, not impressed they were there. Now, in case you're just tuning into our series, here's a little bit of a snapshot.
When we got to the cabin along Wolseley, we stayed there. We had a little bad beginning between me and him, but then eventually, over time, he decided to sit there and ask and hear us out. He mentioned Street Links here. The very same day, we got a hold of them. They came and visited us. That very same day, we went back to the encampment, cleaned out our encampment, and we were here.
I was sleeping outside. I was in bus shacks, wherever I, laid my head at night. I was using drugs, homeless for a very long time.
What's a very long time?
I would say 20 years, roughly.
20 years, Dale.
Yeah.
Does this feel like a home for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I like it here a lot. Got my own bathroom and shower and whatnot, and I got a little kitchen.
I wanted help, so I went to BHF, Behavioral Health Foundation, for 8 months. That helped a lot.
And had you been living without a roof over your head?
I was kind of just always going to house to house or shelter to shelter kind of thing.
What are your hopes now? What's it been like living here?
I really like living here, honestly. I feel like this is good. You move in here and there is still people to talk to, around the building that are kind of going through the same thing. Even when I'm feeling good, I help people around the building too.
Bought this building in, I believe it was 21. It was just the idea that the building seemed to be the right model to help people, and St. Boniface Street Links has the existing setup. And I said, possibly we can visit the idea and see where it takes us.
So that last voice, property owner Sam Turand of Fountain Street now, Dale Boutillier, Gina Wilson, and then Caden McCron we heard from. All of these people have connections with St. Boniface Street Links, which now operates a house for men living with addictions, right? Moorburg House. Then there's the Fountain Street property. There's an emergency shelter also for houseless people on St. Mary's Road, and more moving forward here. So the piece of this puzzle that's growing quickly is the role that private developers and property owners can play in our city. Marian Willis is founder and director of St. Boniface Street Links. She says they now have more housing than people to occupy it. And she's with us in studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So how do you have the surplus of housing spaces?
Well, a few things. The loss of the Canada-Manitoba housing benefit has really impacted our ability to put people into private sector housing. That provided a really important rent top-up, which allowed made private sector housing a lot more affordable for the average person. At this point, we're working a lot right now. We're really focused on encampments and trying to get people out and linked to housing. Some of the housing that we have might not be the best first stop for the people that are coming out of homelessness. And so that's the reason why we have we have some vacancies that we normally don't have. We've also really expanded our relationship with the private sector to strengthen those partnerships, really add to those partnerships. So we have a lot of housing coming online that hasn't actually been used in the past to support people coming out of homelessness.
So can you tell me a little bit about what you have coming online? Because we visited Dale, for example, in East Kildonan. He lives in a bachelor suite. It's attached to a number of others. And then there was a horseshoe space. Is it right that you're going to be taking over 50 spaces there this fall?
At least.
Okay.
As every unit becomes available in the horseshoe that you saw, which were single occupancy little bachelor places. We'll be taking those on, and there's a number of apartment blocks that are a part of that complex. And as suites become available, we'll be taking those on as well. So
Got it.
bit by bit.
So they might need actually some work even before somebody moves in, and so that might explain part of the surplus as well.
They're actually in really good shape, so
not those
it's not so
specifically.
much
Got
that.
it.
It's just people that are exiting and getting ready for somebody new.
Are landlords and owners reaching out to you now, or is this a targeted strategy from your organization to say, okay, there's space in Winnipeg, we know there is, let's reach out to them?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. The partnership that we built with Sam for 259 Fountain has been really impactful. And it's been informative to those who are property owners within the private sector. They're looking at that model and saying, hey, maybe we have something more to offer. Maybe we could lower rents a little bit in exchange for having a service team in the building. Because there's not the damages, there's not, all the chaos sometimes that there would be if you're bringing people right off the street into housing, and in a building where there's no services. I mean, that really is the magic medicine. It's having security in a building. It's having staff on site so that you really are working with individuals and addressing their needs coming in and developing a plan for what it looks like going forward.
So let's talk about that for a moment, because I know that the way you frame this is to make it successful in your view, you have to ask what do people need, which we've long been asking. But you also say you have to ask what is the space need, what does the house need?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about? Like what is needed on site for the
Pretty
space?
much, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So at Fountain, you guys support StreetLinks pays actually for the security and such.
We do.
Yeah. How sustainable is it if you take on all these properties and then have to?
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, it's been the public that's made this possible. I mean, we are a registered charity, and the donor support from the public has been exceptional, and I hope that keeps coming because we're not funded by government or any level of to do this. But the donor support keeps coming in. We had that one donor last year that designated $2.5 million to St. Boniface StreetLinks over 5 years. That kind of money becomes a bit of a game changer for us. And so it's really where you choose to put your money.
I want to walk through the people we met a little bit and talk about what their plans are. But I do want to ask what you say to someone who might be listening and feels that putting a person into a space that is older or maybe even had previously been shuttered, you know what I mean? Or in a tougher part, maybe the city doesn't offer someone a way forward, that we can do better. What's your response to that?
Well, you know what? I would just say go camp out on the riverbank in a tent for a while and realize you have no place to store food. You have no place to use there's no bathroom facilities. There's no dignity. There's no safety living outside in encampments. Bringing people in, even sometimes in something that would be considered very low barrier, it's a place to start. Oftentimes we house people, visit the next day and feel like you're walking into an indoor encampment. It takes a little while for people to relearn those skills and what it really takes to move inside and to make that transition. Once people are out of survival mode, we really work to move people up and out and into better housing. We've lost a lot of our low barrier housing in this city. A lot of it has been shuttered for various reasons. And that's why we have so many people outside. I can tell you that the people at Waterfront, the people along the Assiniboine, people that have been out there for a while, they're all people from the Adnock. They were off the riverbank. They were into the Adnock.
That's an apartment building.
Yeah, and then the Adnock was shuttered, and now they're back out there again. It becomes really, really difficult to work with people when that is their experience with housing. It makes far more sense for us to find a way to work supportively with property owners and try to look at this through the lens that they look through, and rather than shuttering buildings, find a way to work with people. So create the win-win-win.
There's a whole bunch of different approaches going on right now. I want to just lean into the people that we met through your organization. So we met Dale, and then we met Caden, Anna, and Gina. So the Fountain property, what does support look like there? I understand you guys are offering like cooking and skills now.
Yeah, really depends on who's there at the time, but it's linking people to food security, getting people set up with food banks. It's
you guys
taking
are making
people.
Soup this weekend?
We're making soup. It's like finding, sourcing garden produce. Right now it's summer and people are harvesting. It's about teaching cooking, teaching just some light housekeeping skills, getting people, kind of organized, mapping out what life looks like forward. Are we going back to school? Are we, just looking for other housing? We mental health supports. All of that is provided in-house. And by the time the people are ready to move out and transition into other housing, they become very stable, good candidates for very good housing.
And I know you're following through with Dale as well.
Yes.
He needs some medical supports. I want to ask you about Caden and Anna, because this is interesting. So Caden and Anna actually have moved from Fountain. They were in there for a short period of time. You're continuing to support them, I understand. Where is Caden now?
Yeah, so again, it's all that care planning when people come into Fountain. What Caden really needed was recovery. And so Caden, pardon me, has now moved on to Moorbrick House, where he's entered long-term recovery. He's been there for a little while now, and he's doing fabulously. His partner, Anna, faced a little more of a personal crisis, and she's moved back home with her father. We're in touch.
So you're still following through?
We'll continue. We never close our files. We'll continue to follow long-term with both these individuals.
I think it's interesting only because it shows how individual everything is and the follow-through. But some people might also be saying it shows that maybe it's too quick. How do you know if someone's ready to move? And then if they move to a space, then move elsewhere in a couple of weeks, do you still count that as a successful connection? It's difficult to measure success. How do you view that?
I'm going to say that the opposite of everything dark in life is actually connection. And so whenever you can connect with individuals and you can offer them something and they accept that no matter what it is, you begin to form that relationship. So I would suggest to you that the very fact that they're not on the riverbank anymore, one's in recovery, the other one is transitioning through lots of different things right now, and that we continue to have that connection. They have connections with their families now. Those are very, very good outcomes. Don't always measure your outcomes based on the fact that somebody's living at a particular address, and is staying for X amount of time. It's really about personal growth and understanding people's needs and finding a way to meet those needs.
Thank you for being here, and also thank you for helping us make the connections to meet the individuals we're talking about with their permission. By the way, I think that's important. We're not sitting here talking about people's lives without having met them and understood, where they're coming from first. We'll talk again.
Thank you, Marcy. That
is Marion Willis, founder and director of St. Boniface Street Links. Still to come in our series, we will have a closer look at some of the other organizations working to end homelessness, and we're also going to look at the provincial strategy against the idea that we do not have enough space right now in the city in terms of new builds coming online. My interviews with the mayor and with the premier will resume in a couple of weeks for our fall session. Right now, we've got to move along to Wednesday morning sports and Scott Regier. Good morning.
Hey, Marcy.
So led by the team's oldest player, Scott, the Jays begin a new win streak last night. People are hoping.
Toronto beat Pittsburgh on the strength of another strong Max Scherzer outing. The 40-year-old future Hall of Famer, Marcy, allowed just one run.
I don't think I was quite as sharp as I've been, but I also made pitches when I needed to. Really felt like Kirky and I were on the same page. We really got well together on how we wanted to pitch everybody in sequence. So Kirky did a great job back there. So maybe it wasn't quite as sharp, but guess what? There was a lot of other things that were great, and that's what makes for a good team win.
Kirky, of course, catcher Alejandro Kirk, who augmented his stellar defense last night by hitting a couple of homers. George Springer added one himself, so plenty of positives for the Jays, Marcy. But it has been the play of Scherzer down the stretch that might be most encouraging. He went 6 innings last night, something he's now done in 5 straight contests. At this rate, he could end up being Toronto's first game starter in the playoffs. First, they have to get there, of course, and they'll continue their pursuit tonight with the rubber match against the Pirates.
Let's go to football. What are the Bombers focusing on ahead of their visit to Montreal tomorrow? If I were coaching them, I would just say, finish.
Yeah. Well, they want to string. That's right. Yeah. Finish what you started. Stringing together wins, though, is the key. Winnipeg, Marcy, has yet to post back-to-back victories since they opened the season at 3-0. The club looks poised to do it this week as they're taking on a Montreal team that's been struggling as well of late. The Owls have lost 3 in a row. On top of that, they are about to start their 4th different quarterback this season. As things stand, James Morgan looks to be under center tomorrow night. Until last week, when he came in as an injury replacement, Morgan had never even thrown a pass in a regular season game before. You'd think that would have the Bombers' defense licking their chops. However, head coach Mike O'Shea says that's not how the team's looking at it.
We look at it like this guy's a pro quarterback. They've got to that position. They've gotten to this spot being that position all along, right? It's not like he was equestrian, and then he's a pro quarterback. And he's trusted with running an offense, and they got a good coach and a good OC, and everything's about winning as a team, not putting everything on the shoulders of one guy.
Beyond stringing together victories, Marcy, a win tomorrow night will also keep the BC Lions at bay. The Leos a half game back of Winnipeg for third place in that Western Division.
And the Canadian Women's Open tees off tomorrow. What are you going to be watching for?
Brookapalooza.
Yep.
That's how things feel with Brooke Henderson returning to the Mississauga Golf and Country Club. In 2018, Henderson became just the second Canadian woman to ever win the Canadian Open. And since then, she's inspired a legion of young women to take up the sport. Much like Mike Weir did for the likes of Corey Connors and Nick Taylor, Henderson has influenced promising young Canadians like Tilly Claggett and Savannah Gruel. Mississauga native Gruel talked about Henderson's influence.
I definitely looked up to Brooke. I think I was already in high school when she first got out on tour, but I mean, she's had a phenomenal career. I personally think she's the greatest Canadian golfer to ever play the game. And so, I mean, she has done a great job, and I think she's really inspired a lot of Canadians. As we can see, there's a lot of girls coming up now, and I think she's had a really big part of that.
Gruel suggesting Henderson's the greatest ever golfer from this country isn't exactly a controversial take. Consider the top winning males, Mike Weir and George Knutson, won 8 tour titles each, and Brooks won 13 so far. Canadian Open goes tomorrow.
All right, thanks a lot, Scott.
You betcha.
That's Scott Regier with Morning Sports on CBC. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. At 7:30, we're at 17 degrees with mostly clear skies over downtown Winnipeg. We are expecting a sticky day ahead with a humidex value at 37. Good morning. I'm Matt Humphrey. Some travelers flying Air Canada out of Winnipeg say the airline could have had better customer service during its labor disruption. Alice Kapinga was working on trying to get home to Denmark yesterday. She's from Copenhagen. She and her family eventually got tickets and found a way home, but their frustration still lingered.
They told us that all our agencies are booked right now, and then they just hang up. It's not even like putting us in the line or anything, which we would have rather preferred, because we can wait 2 hours on the phone if that's what we need to do.
Air Canada says thousands of staff members are working to help get travelers rebooked, but the airline is also asking for patience as it resumes operations. A woman who was found dead at a Winnipeg hotel more than a year ago has been identified by her family as Melanie McKay, days after a new sketch of the previously unidentified woman was shared with the public. We're told McKay, who was from Garden Hill First Nation in northern Manitoba, was the third oldest of 6 sisters and a mother of 5 children. She was found dead on August 10th of last year at the Manwin Hotel building on Main Street. Foul play is not suspected in her death. Winnipeg police are asking a court to find a care home in contempt for refusing to hand over documents. The information is related to a 90-year-old woman who died last year, a week after falling out of bed. The CBC's Caitlin Gowerluck has your details.
The saga started in February when police got an order requiring Concordia Place to disclose a list of information related to the woman's death. The care home refused and is trying to get a court to quash the production order police got from a judge. It's arguing provincial legislation prevents it from handing over the documents because they're linked to an internal investigation that's supposed to be confidential. Now, Winnipeg police are also going to court, trying to have the care home found in contempt for refusing to comply with the production order and force Concordia Place to turn over the information. The care home says while the woman had a fractured leg after the fall last October, there's no evidence the incident caused her death. Caitlin Gowerluck, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Wildfire experts say Manitoba needs better forest management practices to help prevent devastating summer wildfires. They agree climate change will mean drier forests and warmer temperatures, but there's no clear consensus on what best practices Manitoba should adopt. Mike Flanagan is a wildland fire professor at Thompson Rivers University in British Columbia. He says wildfires are a natural part of Canada's vast boreal forests. And rather than changing the forest landscape, the focus should be on preventing wildfires caused by humans.
Most of the fires in Manitoba this May were human caused. So improved education programs, fire bans. Most fire management agencies are really good at using fire bans.
Another BC fire expert, however, says communities and provinces should look at better forest management. Fire ecologist Robert Gray, also out of BC, says that would involve adopting practices such as prescribed burning, clearing and thinning trees, and restoring grasslands. And in just a few minutes, you can hear more about this story. During Information Radio, we'll be joined by our intrepid reporter, Rosanna Hempel, who is working on this story. That's just before the 8 o'clock news. A traveling exhibit arrived in Carman yesterday with the goal of destigmatizing survivors of sexual assault. It's called What Were You Wearing? Genesis House set up mannequins in a park and dressed them in clothes similar to what survivors wore when they were attacked. Things like sweats, nursing scrubs, and pajamas. Tyler Gertz is a clinical social worker with Genesis House, which runs a crisis center in the Pembina Valley. She provides counseling to survivors, and she says the exhibit gives them a voice.
We just put a question out to our clients. Would you be interested in replicating your outfits that you wore during your assault to be able to really destigmatize what sexual assault looks like? And we had a really positive uptake. We've had lots of people who wanted to share.
The exhibit was on display in Morden and Winkler earlier this summer before coming to Carman this week. Gertz says they want assault victims to know it's not their fault, and there's support available to them. And finally, this just in, the city of Winnipeg has selected a number of properties in various parts of the city for supportive housing. The 5 sites are city-owned properties, including the 500 block of Sherbourne, 1100 block of Plessis Road, Poseidon Bay, and the 600 block of Stella Avenue. The city says it's working with the province and nonprofit partners to add new housing units as quickly as possible. Supportive housing includes wraparound health, wellness, and safety services, all in an effort to fight homelessness. In early September, the city will hold 3 open houses on the developments if you'd like your voice heard. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg.
Thanks, Matt.
Back soon.
I was just leaning into that news about the supportive housing sites. We've been asking the city for a long time where they're going to, where they're looking at. So it'll be interesting to now go deeper into not just the consultation process, Corey, but going into those neighborhoods and seeing, where is this? What's around here, and how will it fit in?
Yeah, how many units, everything else too.
You are here to talk about the weather.
Yes. So let's start in Winnipeg here, then we'll check out the other spots in the province. So right now, Winnipeg sitting at 17. Still quite a ways to go till we get to our high today of 29. It's going to be a mix of sun and cloud today. But with that humidex, though, going to feel more like 37. So very, very sticky, icky day out there. And that's pretty much the case actually right across the province. And actually there's showers or thunderstorms even expected tonight as well. It's going to dip down to 18. Looking to Brandon right now. Brandon actually much of western Manitoba as well as the Interlake and even actually all the way up into northwestern Manitoba, northwestern central Manitoba around Blood Vein area. All under a thunderstorm watch right now. So heads up there. Might hit anytime. Those things will be pretty isolated. 16 degrees right now in Brandon. Heading for a high today of 31 with about a 30% chance of showers today. That with the humidex going to feel more like 39 today. Going to dip down to 18 overnight with some thunderstorms. Very similar case as well in Dauphin as well. Pretty much a carbon copy of Brandon. But it is actually already warmer in Dauphin. It's already 20 degrees right now in Dauphin, heading for a high today of 29. Thompson, you're actually, there's a special weather statement right now issued from Environment Canada saying that there very well could be a lot of rainfall coming your way starting Thursday morning up until Friday night. They say about 50 to 70 millimeters in the Thompson area and parts of northern Manitoba. I know.
Cue the celebration music. Better late than never, Mother Nature.
Exactly. So that could lead to a rainfall warning, but right now it's just a special weather statement. So keep an eye out for that as Thursday morning comes closer and that system draws near. It is 11 right now in Thompson, heading for a high today of 26, with the humidex going to feel more like 31, going to dip down to 13 overnight. You can expect those showers to start tomorrow morning. Could be quite a bit of rain coming your way. As for the commute, very quiet so far. Haven't heard of any major issues. But if you're out there, you see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, next on CBC, a warning that this next story does deal with sexual assault, and it's building on what Matt was mentioning in the news about a Southern Manitoba shelter for survivors of sexual and partner violence tackling victim blaming head on and in using art to send the message. What Were You Wearing? Clothing is Not an Excuse is the name of the exhibit organized by Genesis House out of Winkler. The exhibit features mannequins varying in age and size, dressed in replicas of outfits worn by real Manitoba women when they were assaulted. It's a harrowing look into the reality of sexual violence, and right now it is in Royal Park. That's a public park in Carman because it's moving community to community. Resident Terry Dick went to see it there yesterday. She told CBC it's an emotional reminder that abuse can happen to anyone.
You can read about these things and what happens, but when you actually see how it took somebody's life or abuse and that it, you can just not understand why it happens, but you can feel it. Like you can empathize with these people of what they've gone through.
Angela Braun joins us live now via Zoom. She's executive director of Genesis House. Good morning.
Good morning.
So powerful. Can you describe the display just for people that haven't seen the image of this? What will they see? How are the mannequins arranged? What are they wearing?
Yeah, what are they wearing? There's 5 mannequins. And they are wearing pretty much everyday clothes, what you would expect. We have one that is in a nurse's uniform. We have a person wearing a hockey jersey. We have another mannequin wearing a sweatshirt and a hoodie. Probably the most impactful, I expect, is the child wearing pajamas. And then we have a Low German, a woman dressed in a Low German Mennonite, a typical outfit that we would see.
What's the reaction, if you know, from the Manitoba women that these mannequins represent? These are based on real stories.
They're based on real stories, and we have their permission to replicate their outfits. And so, and actually, they were really feeling quite empowered by us doing that, by actually putting their stories virtually out there, not exactly their clothes, but so very close. And the fact that the clothes are everyday clothes. So it really brings home the fact that no one is asking for it. It is not the victim's fault.
Tell me a little bit more about the exhibit's intent, because you've alluded to it there. A large part of this is starting the conversation and continuing it, rather, about victim blaming. When you look back over the last couple of decades, how has the way we understand victim blaming changed and hopefully improved?
Well, I think one of the biggest pieces of the work of Genesis House is that we need to make sure that community understands that we can't blame the victim. It is not the victim's fault, whether it comes to domestic violence or sexual assault. It is not the victim's fault. And I think as time goes on and as we learn more and more, I think particularly the way the court system handles a sexual assault, the idea that the memory doesn't seem to exactly fit, or it changes, the victim's story changes. Well, we know now that trauma impacts memory. And so if there's obviously a sexual assault is going to be traumatizing, so their memory is going to be impacted by that. And right now the court system they penalize the victim for not being consistent in their memories, when actually that is a biological brain factor that she cannot control. It's part of our body's way of protecting us.
Why do you think the question that's around this exhibit, a quote, "What were you wearing?" Is still asked, even though most people by now, I feel like, should know not to be asking that, whether it's in the courts or whether it's in one's life. I mean, that it's such a clear, it's part of the definition of victim blaming in 2025. Why do you think it persists?
I really don't know. I would say that that is really at the heart of gender-based violence and sexual violence, is that it is about control and who has the power. And so because predominantly men have the power, we continue to excuse their actions by putting the blame back onto the victims, whether that is gender-based violence again or sexual violence. So what she was wearing, that comment really just alludes to the fact that it was her fault. Or where was she? Why was she there by herself? Honestly, we should be able to, in 2025, be safe to walk alone on our own streets, but that is not the case. And if something happens to us, I'm not sure the court will positively support us through the system.
Some of the people, of course, Angela, who are going to, view this exhibit are going to be survivors of sexual violence themselves. What do you hope people think about, or they specifically, that population, might think about when they see this?
Well, they have seen it. And actually, when they attend the exhibit, they are saying to us, we're so grateful that you're doing this. We're so grateful. This happened to me and I never talked about it. It wasn't safe for me to talk about it. So opening up the door or the conversation for other folks to know that they're supported and that they can talk about it, that is what we're hearing from community. We have not had any negative feedback about the exhibit.
It is in Carman now until the end of the week. Is this the end of the run? I think it's moved to other places before this, or where does it go next if not?
Right now, this was the end of the run with this season. We will keep the mannequins and we will be able to pull them out at any point in time. The mannequins were donated to us from Gardenland Co-op, who happened to be closing their doors. And so that was a perfect opportunity when our sexual assault intervention coordinator, Taylor, had this idea for this display, worked out perfectly. So we will hold on to the mannequins, and we welcome community. If they are interested to have them up as a display to get people talking about things, we welcome those opportunities.
How can people get in touch with you if somebody is listening and maybe they're thinking we would like that opportunity at our space or organization?
Absolutely. They can look us up on the internet. We're genesishouseshelter.ca, and our phone number will pop up when they do that. And actually, probably even the easiest is just calling our crisis line. There's a rollover, so you never have to worry with the crisis line that you're taking up space. And the other side of this is if you have experienced sexual assault, and it is historical, let's say it happened 10 years ago, and you still are struggling, you can call our crisis line and we will be able to help you navigate what supports you may need even now.
Appreciate having you on this morning, Angela. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's Angela Braun. She's the executive director at Genesis House. The exhibit is in Carman, as I mentioned, until the end of the week. And if you want to reach out to them, genesishouseshelter.ca. And if you want to see what we're talking about, this powerful display, you can please go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. One of our reporters, Azabina Ahmed, was actually out in Carman yesterday.
Whether it's breaking news from around the world, across the country, or in your own hometown, it's all at your fingertips on the CBC News app. Get the top stories from where you live under the local tab, or watch video clips, live events, and the national on your smartphone or tablet. Get all the news you want, when you want it, where you want it, with the CBC News app. Download the app for free today.
7:46 a.m., 17 in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy, heading for a high of 29 with humidex. It's going to feel like 37. We've got that rainfall warning for Thompson and that area in the north tomorrow. Rain at times heavy. It's going to be about 50 to 70 millimeters. So we're talking tomorrow morning through Friday night with the rain. We also have a severe thunderstorm watch today for Westman. So that region includes Brandon, but also through the interlake between Arborg and Grand Rapids. So that's a severe thunderstorm watch. And as you can imagine, with this kind of heat we're talking about and humidity, it's going to potentially break everywhere. So in Winnipeg, we are expecting possible storms or thunderstorms tonight. And then tomorrow looks like it's going to be a rainy day here in the city of Winnipeg. But right now, 17, Brandon 18 and mostly cloudy. And in Thompson, we had shallow fog reported earlier. It looks like that's cleared up and now it's 13 degrees. Well, up next on CBC, a conversation about something that you may have heard in the news this morning. As CBC reported last month, Republican lawmakers in Michigan say Canada is doing a poor job controlling wildfires this year. They blame the Canadian government for that state's poor air quality. Environmental experts, though, say the solutions to keeping wildfires under control are not that simple, especially when you take climate change into account. Here in Manitoba, more than a dozen communities have been evacuated due to wildfires, and more than 7% of the province's forests have burned. So what are the options for forest management as we head into more dry summers, frankly, in the future? The CBC's Rosanna Hempel has been looking into the story, and she's here live to walk us through what she's found. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what are experts saying about how Manitoba, has been managing the risk of wildfires?
Well, let's start with what they agree on. They agree that climate change will mean drier forests, warmer temperatures in our future, and they agree that Manitoba, but I don't just want to single out Manitoba, it's also other provinces. They need better forest management in this reality. But some are divided on best practices and which options this province should pursue. So I spoke to an expert, Robert Gray. He's a fire ecologist out in BC. And before I get into what communities can do when it comes to some of those practices, I want to play you a clip where he explains what we're up against.
Fire is a contagion. It moves through a landscape and it finds those holes and it'll exploit them. So you have to do a consistent job out to a good distance.
Knowing that, let's talk about some of those practices. I asked him how communities, how the forest industry, and the province could be doing that. And he told me about a few different options, so I'll walk you through them. Prescribed burns, that's something where you deliberately set an area of land on fire in a controlled way. Some other ways include clearing and thinning trees, restoring grasslands, wet meadows. And for it to really work, he says that communities need to treat 40% of the landscape that's around them using some of those options. And it would need to be at a great distance. So he said at least 10 kilometers out from that community. And it's because of the embers. They can blow kilometers with a strong wind. And he says Manitoba should be working with the forest industry to make some of these things happen because they'd benefit from it too.
I can confidently say that the industry is scared to death. Just here in BC, around 15% of the timber harvesting land base has been lost to fire in the last 7 years. You're looking at catastrophic failure in the industry, and that's BC, and I'm sure it's the same across the country. So it's at an inflection point right now where they're going to have to look seriously at how do you maintain the industry? And that means shifting this focus to an objective focused on wildland fire and not just timber harvesting.
So what he's arguing is using harvesting, so logging, as a tool to meet a different objective.
What are other experts that you spoke with saying?
So I also talked to Mike Flanagan. He's a professor of wildland fire at Thompson Rivers University in BC. And he says that Manitoba's approach of monitoring wildfires that aren't threatening communities is appropriate. And you wouldn't want to, he says you wouldn't want to put out every single wildfire anyway because it's very expensive, first of all, and it's a natural part of the boreal forest ecology. And when I put this to him, he suggested that some of our American neighbors might not fully grasp that. But that being said, with climate change, there will be a greater risk of wildfires. And he says that we should focus on what we can control. We talked about a lot of different things, but in a nutshell, he said we should be focusing on proactive backcountry travel and fire bans and the Fire Smart program.
Now, we'll get into some of those bans and the Fire Smart program in a moment. But first, I want us to get out of Manitoba. So what are other provinces doing that maybe Manitoba is not?
So communities in BC, for example, are doing these controlled burns. So this is an Indigenous cultural burning practice that has been used as a land management tool for a very long time. In recent years, we've seen a resurgence of the use of this tool in Australia, for example, in California. And Parks Canada has used it for 4 decades, including near Jasper. So one example that Gray told me about was a case that he worked on a couple of years back in the community of Ackham, north of Cranbrook, that's in BC. And they did a 12 square kilometer prescribed burn that year. And it did take a few years to plan. So they go ahead with that prescribed burn the next year. So that was last summer. The community credited that burn with saving the nearby airport and most of the community's homes.
At 1,300 hectares, it still wasn't big enough. But that's the start. We have enough examples of that now between Canada and the US where we've seen post facto the effectiveness of these things. We're just not doing it fast enough and a big enough scale.
So controlled burns are something that the Manitoba Wildfire Service has done here, including out at Spruce Woods Provincial Park this past spring. But it's not clear to me to what extent this province is using the tool, in particular when we're talking about wildfires, and they declined interviewing with us for the story.
Now, we know a lot of wildfires are human-caused. How effective are backcountry travel and fire bans, which you alluded to earlier and we had this summer?
So just to give you an idea of how many of those fires are human-caused, between 2016 and 2020, it was 42% were human-caused. So that's a big blanket thing that could mean, campfires, ATVs, maybe a cigarette, things like that. And but 42%, that's still a decent proportion. This is where Flanagan says we should be targeting our attention. And he says backcountry travel and fire bans are a very effective way of doing that.
Most of the fires in Manitoba this May were human caused. So improved education programs, fire bans. Most fire management agencies are really good at using fire bans. Forest closures, there seemed to be a reluctance because it's so unpopular, okay? Because it means no industry and no recreation.
So in hindsight, he says Manitoba could have been more aggressive with some of those bans and the education outreach. If we think back to the spring, the province first announced some of those enhanced fire and travel restrictions in Manitoba's Interlake and southeastern regions, and that was at the end of April.
Mm-hmm. Corey was just checking, actually, our director, where they're still in place. Because I haven't talked about a fire ban in a while, and still in the Ontario area in the Whiteshell, there's bans there. There has been, I understand, some push though to make fire smart homes mandatory near at-risk locations. What's that about?
So that's something that Flanagan is advocating. I'll walk through that Fire Smart program in a minute. But it is something I put to the Natural Resources Minister, Ian Bouchey's office. His spokesperson said it is an idea that they need to look at because it is challenging to adapt some of these older buildings to some of the standards that program is suggesting. So just walk you through what that program is. So it mostly focuses on what a property owner and what a resident can do around their home. So that means making sure that it's built with things that are fire resistant, making sure that the plants are fire resistant, that the trees that are planted there are well spaced, that they're well pruned so the fire can't climb up the tree. So, and this is an approach that the Manitoba government supports on a volunteer basis, and they do have resources on their website. But I want to play you a clip where Flanagan explains why he thinks it should be mandatory.
Fire typically enters a community through a rain of embers, little burning bits of twig, bark, sometimes pine cones, and it falls. And these are carried by the wind, sometimes 2 kilometers. So here comes that ember rain. And it hits the one house that hasn't fire smart, and then it spreads structure to structure. So you'll lose the whole block. You're as strong as your weakest link.
So coming back to the first expert I spoke to, we did talk about this Fire Smart program, and he says, he supports some aspects of it, but overall he doesn't find it very realistic because you're putting it on the homeowner to have the money and to be willing to put that money forward to do those renovations, to do all that landscaping work. And that's why he supports some of these more large-scale land management tools that protect the whole community.
And also you're talking about something that's mandatory in the backwoods of Manitoba and having to monitor just thinking about the widespread properties. And if it's mandatory, then you're going to have to be looking at every tree, how it's pruned. And I when you talk about realistic, it's hard to understand how many people there would have to be involved in the system to do those checks. You said the province has not given us an interview, but what are they saying?
So they did say that they would be happy to chat in the fall, but not now. And it's because the staff are very busy with wildfire suppression. They have told me that, and they've also previously said this, that there will be a review of Manitoba's preparedness and the suppression efforts after the wildfire season.
All right. Well, we'll hold them to that, and we'll see what they follow up with this fall. Thank you very much for this, Rosanna.
You're welcome.
That is Rosanna Hempel, reporter for CBC Manitoba. If you want to read more about this, cbc.ca/Manitoba. And what will help as the province continues to work on that fire suppression right now is rain, and we're going to get it. We have a rainfall statement, special weather statement for the north. So 50 to 70 millimeters of rain, local amounts higher, possibly. And so that is going to be starting tomorrow into Friday. Right now it's 2 minutes to 8. Here's Matt Humphrey back with more headlines.
Good morning. Some travelers flying Air Canada out of Winnipeg say the airline could have had better customer service during this recent labor disruption. The company has reached a tentative agreement with the Flight Attendants Union, which is signaling an end to the contract dispute, but many say this possible resolution came too late to save their travel plans. And rebooking and replanning has been very frustrating. We'll hear some of their stories at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Back soon.
The other thing in the weather that I want to mention here, just back to the weather briefly, a severe thunderstorm watch in Westman today. So that's around Brandon, also through the Interlake, Grand Rapids, really the whole western part of the province. In Winnipeg, mostly cloudy, 17. Our high today, 29. Sticky, hot, humidex 37. And we are going to get a mix of sun and cloud this morning. So we're seeing that downtown already. After 8 o'clock on the show, building on what Matt was just talking about, we're going to look more at what this tentative deal for Air Canada and the flight attendants could mean when you look at the aspects of labor that it has raised. It's always been standard practice for flight attendants to only be paid when they're flying, but that practice is actually not supposed to be the norm. It is a loophole, according to a guest I'm going to have on after 8. He's going to look at the Canada Labor Code that is used by airlines. Stay tuned.
Today on Q. I'm Jill Deacon in for Tom Power. Filmmaker Sean Devlin is here to talk about his new movie Asog about the super typhoon Haiyan, which hit the Philippines in 2013.
I actually had to add a new level warning to the storm systems.
And why he chose to hire real-life survivors of the typhoon to star in the film.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Rebecca Zandbergen. If you were out for a stroll today, you probably saw someone wearing a weighted vest. They are one of the most recent fitness trends, and they are all over social media. But do they actually help your workout? We weigh the pros and cons coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Air Canada flight attendants are in the process of ratifying the contract agreement that ended their strike. Their union reached a deal with the airline. It brought workers off the picket lines. But as Yasmin Renea reports, the effects of the strike will be felt for days.
Air Canada planes are in the sky once again, but the airline says passengers should still expect cancellations in the coming days while it returns to normal operations.
We had a flight on Monday and it was cancelled. I think it was Sunday.
Spanish tourist Carlos Reyes and his family are stuck in Vancouver, unable to catch a flight until the end of the week, spending hundreds of dollars on hotels in the meantime.
Air Canada doesn't pay anything. They say it's a strike, and so they are not responsible for the costs of the hotel.
But hotels aren't an option for everyone.
So I slept in chairs on the airport last night.
Kate Brown waited for hours at Vancouver International Airport to return to Toronto.
I'm really stressed and I really want to take a shower and just lie in a proper bed.
Air Canada estimates 500,000 passengers have been affected by the strike. Vancouver resident Lucy Bingfield and her partner have lost days off their Portugal trip, but say it's worth it.
At the end of the day, what's more important, us going on vacation or people getting paid for the actual work they do? Yeah.
Air Canada says it could take more than a week for operations to return to normal. Yasmin Renea, CBC News, Vancouver.
Canada Post and the union representing its workers are back at the bargaining table today. The union is upholding a ban on overtime work. Postal workers rejected the Crown Corporation's latest offer a few weeks ago. The offer would have included wage hikes of around 13% over 4 years and the addition of part-time workers. NATO military leaders will meet virtually today to find solutions to ending the war in Ukraine. Kyiv is looking for security assurances, but Russian President Vladimir Putin says he will not tolerate NATO troops in Ukraine. As Crystal Gomansing reports from London, Russia is not backing down on its attacks.
A fuel and energy facility in the Odessa region in southern Ukraine was hit in the early morning hours. Fire teams struggled to control the inferno. State emergency services describe it as being the result of a massive Russian drone strike. Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, shared images of the attack and another in the Sumy region on his Telegram channel, writing that new sanctions and tariffs are needed on Moscow until diplomacy works fully. In the meantime, NATO military experts are preparing to discuss potential post-conflict plans for Ukraine.
Deterrence rests on the credible ability to fight, or it's not a worthwhile guarantee.
Retired General Richard Barrons was the commander of the UK's Joint Forces Command until 2016. While many nations, including Canada, France, and the UK, have said they will be involved in security guarantees for Ukraine, what that means in real terms is unknown.
The rules of engagement are going to have to be robust enough to deal with a very tense, difficult situation. And you must assume that any agreement will at least fray at the edges at some point.
The front line in Ukraine stretches over 1,000 kilometers, and Russia has not committed to ending the war or even engaging in more talks. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
An Israeli military official says about 60,000 reservists will be called up before the IDF pushes forward with its ground offensive into Gaza City. The call-up notices could be sent in the coming days, and reservists will be ordered to report for duty in September. The official told Reuters news agency the reservists could be in the Air Force, intelligence, or supporting roles, or they may replace active duty soldiers stationed outside Gaza. The statement comes as Israel is still under pressure to respond to a 60-day ceasefire deal. Hamas has already agreed. Israel is expected to respond by Friday. More U.S. troops are moving into Washington, D.C. They've been ordered there to help U.S. President Donald Trump clean up crime. Members of the National Guard from West Virginia are now in the U.S. Capitol, and Republican governors from other states say they're deploying more members, too. The CBC's Lisa Shing is in Washington this morning. And Lisa, exactly how many U.S. troops are in D.C. or headed there?
So there are already 800 National Guard troops in D.C. Now, the Republican governors of 6 states are sending an additional 1,000 troops to the district. Guards from West Virginia are in Washington already and could be operational today. These Republican governors, South Carolina, Ohio, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee, as well as West Virginia, like I said, all announced they'll send guards here. This is a show of force and escalation as U.S. President Donald Trump cracks down on crime. If you remember last week, Trump announced a federal takeover of the D.C. Metropolitan Police Force, citing a public safety emergency. Now, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has routinely said that's overkill, that this isn't about crime in the district.
The numbers on the ground in the district don't support 1,000 people from other states coming to Washington, D.C.
While crime is an issue here, the stats show violent crime is down 27% this year compared with last year.
But Trump is disputing the mayor's crime stats, right?
He is. There are reports the Justice Department is now looking into whether the D.C. Police Department manipulated crime data. Trump seemed to confirm this investigation, saying on social media that D.C. gave fake crime numbers in order to create a false illusion of safety. The D.C. Police Department put one of its commanders on leave back in May and started investigating him for allegedly making changes changes to crime data. But the mayor has said the police chief has investigated all of the city's policing districts and only had concerns about the one commander.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Lisa Shing in Washington. The proportion of Mounties on long-term off-duty sick leave is at an all-time high, and an outside task force suggests it is now a critical issue for the RCMP. Long-term off-duty sick status is for absences longer than 30 days caused by illness, injury, or disability. As of the end of last year, about 7% of regular members were on this kind of leave. The cost? An estimated $58 million. The task force says it could affect public safety, and it suggests unlimited sick leave at full pay needs to be reconsidered. The RCMP union says it strongly disagrees. Nova Scotia fire officials say they are making progress containing a large wildfire in Annapolis County. They say the Long Lake fire did not grow overnight, but manager of fire protection Scott Tingley says the danger is not over.
We do anticipate that there could be a couple of challenging days in between now and likely Saturday and Sunday.
Winds are expected to become more volatile as Hurricane Erin approaches the east coast. Newfoundland and Labrador is not expected to be directly affected by the storm, but fire crews there are hoping for more rain. 2 wildfires are still burning out of control in the province. Karen Pauls has the latest on how some residents are doing.
Christine McNeil is cooking up some fish and chips in her restaurant called The Mess Tent.
We were tasked this morning with 20 meals, we were told, for the operators on the front line. They're doing so much for us. It's nice that I actually have the opportunity to give back to them.
Not far away, the road is blocked off because of Newfoundland's largest fire, which has already destroyed more than 200 structures, houses, garages, and sheds. McNeil's cook lost his home and his truck. Like many here, he's too traumatized to talk about it.
They're absolutely devastated. Their whole lives have just disappeared. They're not sure what they're going to see when they go back in. Some are saying that they will rebuild, and others are saying they don't want to take a chance, and others just say, we're too old, we're just going to go with family or seniors' homes.
There's been rain here in the last day. Good news for firefighters. The 3,000 people who've been forced from their homes and nearly 13,000 still on evacuation alert, like Louise Power, who takes her medication and other necessities with her whenever she leaves the house, just in case.
I'm still worried. It's not over till it's finally out. And that's a worry that everybody around here has on their mind. When is this going to be over?
The province says it could be weeks or even months before people can get into these affected areas. That has implications for kids heading back to school in a few weeks, and for all those people looking for a place to live heading into colder weather. Karen Pauls, CBC News near Job's Cove, Newfoundland.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
It's going to be a sticky day here in Manitoba. Also, we could see some severe weather in terms of storms, and some rain is coming for the north. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on CBC. Getting your days started here with us. I'm Marcy Marcusa here on Information Radio. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube, your morning show for Wednesday, August 20th, as we get closer and closer to school starting. Well, this half hour on the program, it has always been standard practice for flight attendants to only be paid when they're flying in the air. But that practice is not supposed to be the norm. It is actually what my guest this half hour calls a loophole in the Canadian Labour Code, used by airlines to profit from unpaid labor. We're going to look at that. Also, we're going to look at where unpaid labor practices are happening across this country, and why he says in some ways it's becoming the norm. Right now, though, let's go to Matt Humphrey, who has details on developing stories. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning. Police are asking a court to find a Winnipeg personal care home in contempt because the home refused to hand over information from a critical incident report conducted after a 90-year-old woman died following a fall out of a bed there last October. We'll hear the latest at the bottom of the hour. And as Marcy touched on, Air Canada has reached a tentative agreement with the union representing flight attendants, some 10,000 flight attendants, signaling an end to their contract dispute. And while that will come as a relief to many travelers, for many Canadians, including those flying out of Winnipeg, the news came too late to save their trips. We'll hear some reaction to the labor dispute at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Back soon.
Corey Funk is in with a stack of papers. What do you know about the weather?
Yeah, it's going to be a spicy one out there today, but not like a dry chili powder kind of spicy, more like a hot Cholula sauce kind of spicy out there today, like a hot sauce, because it's going to be moist and muggy out there.
I'm going to pretend I know what you're talking about.
Well, it's the humidity really is what I'm talking about. So
I got you.
A high of 29 today, but with that humidex, going to feel more like 37, which is going to give that Cholula hot sauce kind of vibe out there. So look over that, very muggy. And that's pretty much the case right across the province, down south here, up north in Thompson as well. A couple other things to keep an eye out for. There is a severe thunderstorm watch in effect for much of western Manitoba, Brandon West, even up into the Interlake, and even further west to the Blood Vein area as well, west of Lake Winnipeg. So look out for that. And finally, just a heads up, I'm sure this is welcome news for the folks in the north, that there's a weather statement right now letting folks know that starting Thursday morning around Thompson, that there may be lots of rain coming your way, potentially 50 to 70 millimeters of rain coming to the Thompson area starting Thursday morning until Friday. Environment Canada is not quite saying a rainfall warning yet, but they say they very well may be issuing one as Thursday morning comes closer and that system makes its way over here. So keep an eye out for that if you are in Thompson. If you see anything else going on out there on the commute, I would love to hear from you. Haven't heard much this morning. Seems like a very quiet commute overall. But if you see something, though, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
So let's dig into this discussion about unpaid labor. Air Canada's flight attendants brought a magnifying glass to Canada's labor code as they fought for ground pay during a 3-day strike that ended, as you know, yesterday. So Air Canada and the union now have a tentative agreement. It does address some of the unpaid labor, which had been the main sticking point between the two sides. Under the tentative new deal, flight attendants will now be paid at 50% of their wage for either 60 or 70 minutes during boarding time, depending on the size of the aircraft. That will impact what this looks like. Now, our next guest is an expert on labor and social movements who studied the loopholes in the Canada Labour Code that led to unpaid labor. Barry Idlin is with us. He's also an assistant professor, by the way, at the McGill University in Montreal. Thanks so much for joining us via Zoom.
Thanks. Good to be here. I'm in Los Angeles, where we use Cholula like ketchup, basically. So.
Thanks for listening to our weather report with the hot sauce references, right? So let's get right into this. Why had it been the standard for flight attendants to only be paid when they were flying once in the air?
Yeah, right before we get started, I did want to point out that the tentative agreement is subject to ratification by the members. So we're not out of the woods in terms of the current contract. But to your question, basically there had been basically a deal. A deal which is basically that flight attendants wouldn't get paid for the ground time, but the hourly rate that they were paid for the air time would compensate for that, basically. And what we've seen over the years is that the combination of the inflation we've seen in the past few years and inadequate raises in the contract have progressively eroded the hourly rate for airtime. And at the same time, the amount of ground time has increased considerably as we've seen more flight delays, as airlines have sought to cut costs, delay mechanical repairs, run with lighter staffing ratios, and so on. And so basically, that deal had fallen apart, years ago, but they were stuck in a 10-year contract, the flight attendants were. And so basically you had the situation where the airtime wasn't was no longer covering the ground time, and the ground time was getting way out of hand.
I understand also that part of the context here is that years ago when the union agreed to that, they would have had more senior staff in the air for flight attendants doing longer flights. And so that hourly wage actually would have maybe made up more for those, unpaid hours. But now you have a younger workforce and shorter hop flights, like 2 hours, is not going to make up for how much is on the ground.
Yeah, you're doing, Pearson, Paris, that's a lot more airtime, and with a similar amount of ground time than if you're doing, Pearson, Montreal or something like that.
Got it. I just want to widen out here. How common is unpaid labor in Canada?
Yeah, so we need to distinguish here. So what we're talking about with the flight attendants is, like you mentioned, this loophole in the Canada Labor Code that affects airline workers and is, so it is technically legal. It is still, as Canadians rightly saw, fairly immoral, but it was technically legal. But then there's this broader problem in Canada, around the world, of just illegal unpaid labor, in the sense of employers extracting off-the-clock work in various ways, whether that be not paying for workers to, change in and out of their clothes if they work in an environment that requires safety gear or something like that. You think about you work in a meat packing plant, and you have to wear protective gear that takes a long time to get in and out of. You need to clean up due to the nature of your work. That's not getting paid. You have employers that will often, coerce workers into working through their breaks, but still be clocking out. These kinds of things, and these are rampant throughout the economy, in light manufacturing, in retail, in fast food, and they cost workers millions of dollars.
What about in education? I'm just thinking about back to school. We get teachers writing into us all the time saying, I'm doing this on my own time, so to speak.
Yes. So that's a different thing, because teachers don't punch a clock, so to speak, right? They're on salary. But the amount of work that they're expected to do outside of the classroom has grown tremendously, especially in terms of paperwork, on top of often being required to purchase their supplies, which is uncompensated. So there's a lot of work like that where workers are on salary, and the amount of extra work that's being piled on has grown tremendously. I can say my wife is a physician, and the amount of paperwork that she's had to do over the course of her career has dramatically increased. So the patient care part is just one small portion, and the bureaucratic stuff has taken up a larger amount of time, and the compensation has not changed.
It's interesting, because then you start to get into who draws the lines, where are the lines drawn, do all employees understand clearly where the lines are, or some, because you have varying attitudes then among people. Someone might say it's no big deal, I'll go pick up some school supplies. I'm just staying with the educational example, but someone else is saying it's a huge deal. What are the consequences if you're caught breaching the Canada Labor Code as an employer, for example?
That's kind of the problem, is that it is a violation of the law, but the penalties are really not that severe. Basically a fine. You might have to put a notice up in the break room or something like that. But overall, employer theft of workers' wages does not go, is not sanctioned very heavily. The best protection here, of course, is a labor contract, a union contract, because just by definition, there's only so much that government regulators can be a direct presence, on the shop floor or in the workplace, and so you really need that day-to-day enforcement. But even as you saw with your education worker example, it's not a fail-safe guarantee that you have workers, doing a lot of work for free.
I want to return to the tentative deal that still needs to be ratified. But as you alluded to, it addresses flight attendant boarding times, which typically start about 15 minutes after they check in for duty at the airport. The rates of pay will go up 5% a year. What will the deal mean for the industry, do you think, including Air Canada's competitors?
Yeah, well, I think that this is going to set, assuming it gets ratified, and it's not clear that that's the case, because I think flight attendants were sort of thinking, well, why should groundwork be differentiated from airtime? And this has 50% working up to 70% by the end of the 4-year agreement. It remains to be seen how flight attendants who have just been through this massive mobilization will view that and whether they will see that as meeting their needs. But regardless, it's clear that this will set a pattern. Air Canada is the flagship carrier in Canada. There are other carriers that CUPE represents. They're going to be bringing this contract to those carriers, and they're going to be getting rid of the unpaid work at those carriers as well. This is one big reason why unions are so important in our society, is that they raise standards across the board, not just for one group of workers, but for broader swaths of the workforce as well.
Anything to add, Barry? Just because I know you've been thinking about the interview and responding to the story as it's been evolving. Anything to add that you think is important to understand around this issue of unpaid work, or what you're watching with the airline industry?
Well, like I said, I think that, there's been this massive mobilization, and, CUPE deserves a lot of credit for standing up to the government and really taking a stand against this Section 107 and really bringing this issue of unpaid labor to the fore. So what used to be called the Labor Minister, Minister Haidu, is putting together a task force now to investigate unpaid labor. I would encourage her to expand the scope of that inquiry to encompass this broader range of unpaid work, not just in the airline industry, because it is an issue that affects many more Canadians than just the flight attendants. But it is the flight attendants who got that on the radar, and they deserve all the credit for that.
Thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That is Barry Eidlin, expert on labor and social movements and an associate professor at McGill University in Montreal. Now, if you're listening to these stories and you're thinking about your own workplace, or maybe you're an employer and you're thinking about the challenges of managing your workforce, let us know what your thoughts are on unpaid labor. 204-788-3205, 204-788-3205. And speaking of Collins, in a moment we'll check in with Marjorie Dalhouse for what's coming up on Radio Noon today.
Commotion with Elamin Abdelmahmoud.
It's time to talk about funflation.
Crime Story.
You got one witness who can't be found.
This American Life with Ira Glass.
There are signs that read, see something, say something.
Radio Lab.
What is coming up? What is going wrong, actually?
The Sunday Magazine with Pia Chattopadhyay.
How does the last 24 plus hours complicate or change things?
Telling Stories. Sunday night on CBC Radio 1 and on the Listen app.
Well, I just mentioned
Rubik's, Jigsaw, Wordle, hardly. Get ready, Canada. It's time for another edition of That's Puzzling. Host Pia Chattopadhyay competes against one familiar voice and one clever listener in a battle of brain games devised by puzzle master Peter Brown. That's Puzzling all summer long. Friday afternoon at 1:30 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
Well, don't be puzzled. I just talked over the promo. I did just mention that we were going to talk to Marjorie Dalhouse, who's just walked into the studio, about what's coming up on the noon call-in. So here you are.
I am.
Hi.
If you've been shopping lately, you've probably noticed there's a lot of signs saying back to school. Kids are getting ready for, of course, the start of school. And a big part of that is back to school shopping, of course. It is a big business, as we know, but it's also a very stressful time for families who can't go out and afford to spend hundreds of dollars. The Retail Council of Canada says the average Canadian family this year is going to spend anywhere between $600 to $700 per child.
What?
Yeah, for back to school shopping. So we're going to have a financial expert who's going to join us on the show later today to take your questions about where you can save, how you can save, what are some of the things that you need to look at as a family, how do you budget, and also that you can make this a teachable moment for your children when it comes to understanding money and budgeting, and is going to talk about how you can work with your kids on this, on shopping. So stand by with your questions. Give us a call after 12:30 on Radio Noon today.
All right. Thank you, Marge.
Thanks, Marcy.
A surprising number to me, obviously. Thus the what? At 12:30 to 1 o'clock, that's the call-in on Radio Noon. Marjorie is the host, and if you want to weigh in, you can weigh in now also on their taped listener line. If you can't make the conversation live, 788-3797. Well, a little bit of music to get us to that 8:30 hour and news time. This is Sebastian Gaskin's tune from his debut album, Love Child. It's been out since February. This is Song for Granny.
Left with no warning, left me with all my down here, carry the rest of it. Mama got a new job in the city, she still has your things. At least I can't see nothing no more, but her voice is still sings. Everything will be alright. Time. Everyone's gonna be fine. Healing in time. I met me a woman, acting a TV show. You really love her, she's shy about her nose. Said he's selling his house, moving out to the sea. Auntie picked up smoking, you started at age 43. Everything will be alright. Healing in time. Everyone's gonna be fine. Everything will be alright. Healing in time. Everyone's gonna be fine. Oh, no. Healing in time. Everything will be
I love that tune. That's Sebastian Gaskin and Song for Granny. Whenever I listen to the lyrics, I always imagine him singing it to a granny, right? To cook him. I love that. That is Sebastian Gaskin from here in Manitoba. We mentioned a debut album came out in February. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to CBC, and your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. At 8:30, we're at 18 degrees with mostly clear skies over downtown Winnipeg. We are expecting a hot day ahead with a humidex value at 37. Good morning. I'm Matt Humphrey. Air Canada flights are back in the skies, but not all of the airline's customers are happy following the labor disruption. Stephanie Enns was supposed to fly from Winnipeg to New Brunswick last weekend, but her flight was cancelled because the airline's flight attendants were on strike. She says it was nearly impossible to get assistance from Air Canada online, so she went to the Winnipeg airport to find help there.
It's bonkers to me. If they wanted to avoid disruption, then they should have hired more staff to answer phones or I don't know, or improve their online rebooking options.
Air Canada says thousands of staff members are working to help get travelers rebooked, but the airline is also asking for patience as it resumes operations. Winnipeg police are asking a court to find a care home in contempt for refusing to hand over documents. The information is related to a 90-year-old woman who died last year, a week after falling out of bed. In February, police got a judge's order requiring Concordia Place to disclose information related to her death. The care home refused. It argues provincial legislation prevents it from handing over the documents because they're linked to an investigation meant to be confidential. It says while the woman had a fractured leg after the fall, there's no evidence the incident caused her death. Police are asking the court to find the care home in contempt and force Concordia Place to hand over the information. The matter was adjourned last week without any future date set. Wildfire experts say Manitoba needs better forest management practices to help prevent the effects of devastating wildfires. They agree climate change will mean drier forests and warmer temperatures, but there's no clear consensus on what best practices our province should adopt. Robert Gray is a fire ecologist and consultant out of British Columbia. He says fire-prone communities can become more resilient by adopting practices such as prescribed burning, clearing and thinning trees, and restoring grasslands. Gray says provinces should better regulate the forest industry with fire management in mind.
It's at an inflection point right now where they're going to have to look seriously at how do you maintain the industry? And that means shifting this focus to an objective focused on wildland fire and not just timber harvesting.
But at the same time, another expert says not everyone wants forests cleared. Wildland fire professor Mike Flanagan, also out of BC, says fire bans, restrictions on backcountry travel, and programs to make homes more fire smart would be more effective. Meanwhile, Manitoba has sent water bombers to fight wildfires in Nova Scotia now. Premier Wab Kinew says 2 bombers and a bird dog headed out east yesterday. The largest wildfire in Manitoba, or Nova Scotia rather, is burning out of control in the Annapolis Valley. It's estimated to be around 32 square kilometers in size. Here in Manitoba, we're reporting around 150 firefighters, 150 wildfires rather, and we remain under a provincial state of emergency, which will be in place at least until Friday. And finally, a unique traveling exhibit arrived in Carman yesterday with the goal of destigmatizing survivors of sexual assault. It's called What Were You Wearing? Genesis House set up mannequins in a park and dressed them in clothes similar to what survivors wore when they were attacked. There were mannequins wearing nurses' scrubs, pajamas, even hockey equipment. Angela Brown is with Genesis House, which runs a crisis shelter in south central Manitoba. She says they're countering stereotypes which question why someone was sexually assaulted.
What we want to send is that it's not your fault, it's never been your fault, that this exhibit is going to bring that forward in community to really kind of go against that stereotype that says, what were you wearing? Why were you there by yourself? That is never the victim's responsibility. It is about power and control.
The exhibit was on display in Morden and Winkler earlier this summer before coming to Carman this week. And in case you missed it, the city of Winnipeg has selected a number of properties in various parts of the city for supportive housing. The 5 sites are city-owned properties, including the 500 block of Sherburne, the 1100 block of Plessis Road, Poseidon Bay, and the 600 block of Stella Avenue. The city says it's working with the province and nonprofit partners to add new housing units as quickly as possible. Supportive housing includes wraparound health, wellness, and safety services, all in an effort to fight homelessness. In early September, if you want your voice heard about what's happening, the city will hold 3 open houses on the developments. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Thanks for the morning, Mars.
Yeah, you too. That's Matt Humphrey in our news department. In addition, thanks to Megan Ketchison and Joni Nicolo and Darren Bernhardt, who are also out there, and to our live team, May McKillop and Brad Lillies and Corey Funk. Big thanks. Also to the associate producers who worked in the program today, Issa Kixon, Chidi Akuma, and Jenna Bedosso. Thanks for your work. And to Rosanna Hempel as well, one of our reporters, of course, who who was in talking about those that wildfire story. Corey, speaking of which, is here with the last look at weather. I guess speaking of whom?
Yeah, whatever. 19 degrees right now in Winnipeg at the Forks. Heading for a high today of 29. But with that humidex, it's going to feel more like 37. And that's the case right across the province. Severe thunderstorm watch in western Manitoba today, as well as throughout the Interlake as well. Pretty much everything north of Arborg. So look out for that. And starting tomorrow morning, might be a lot of rain coming your way to the Thompson area, potentially 50 to 70 millimeters, says Environment Canada, from Thursday to Friday evening.
All right. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening this morning to Information Radio. Remember, next local programming between noon and 1 with Radio Noon with Marjorie Dalhouse, and then between 3 and 6 this afternoon, Up to Speed with Faith Thundal. Take care, be well, Manitoba. Thanks for joining us all morning long, and we hope you can be back again tomorrow to be with us on Information Radio here on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. The Current is coming up next on 89.3 FM. Have a great Wednesday.